Chapter 81 5-Star Intelligence. The Magical Use of the Swamp Witch. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 35 kilometers southeast, there is a group of swamp life growing in a piece of reeds, green grass grannies. They are very good at taking care of plants and have a connection with the vine fairies. 3 stars. Free. The evil demigod hidden in the dimensional plane, the Lord of Stink and Flies, Stefano, in order to fight against the demon Archduke in the same plane, the Duke of Blood, extended his tentacles to the swamp, and his admirers hid themselves. 30 kilometers to the south of, in an area covered with long black grass, sacrifices were made day and night at a place where corpses were surrounded by flies. 3 stars. 4. 30 kilometers to the west of, in an area full of red flowers, there is an ancient monster buried. After the origin is extracted, the Wetland Lizardman Hero Hags chief can complete the evolution, and the potential can be increased to 3 stars. If this in the process, if you can change your job to a cold-blooded cavalry, you can strengthen your own talents and obtain the second talent. 3 stars. 5. The Swamp Authority will appear 20 kilometers east of Welu City on the morning of October 14th. At that time, it will attract the attention of level 16 flying dragons and a large number of swamp life forms. 5 stars. Orange. Lear's heart trembled after reading all the information, his gaze became extremely hot, this time the information was so terrifying. The minimum is 2-star information. There are as many as 3 pieces of 3-star information, and the last one is 5-star orange information. Ha ha ha, big bang. I was in an extremely excited mood and started taking stock from the first item. These are extremely precious harvests, 2-star iron or news, and a caveman who can mine veins is also given as a gift, iron or is a strategic material. Now that there are more manpower, the shortage of iron tools is obviously felt. Reclamation and planting, cutting firewood and logging, breeding and hunting, all of which require iron tools. In terms of military affairs, although they had 200 sets of standard armor before, the number of wetland lizardmen now exceeds 600. On average, 3 people need 1 set of standard armor. It is far from meeting the needs after expansion. This iron ore came just in time. 2-star value, definitely worthy of it. Article 2. Granny Green Grass, who is related to the Vine Fairy. The Vine Fairies are creatures created by the Swamp God, so are these green grass witches. My interest surged. He knew the role of the Vine Fairy all too well. It was a key strategic force and the main force in the construction of Welu City. Now I have another person who is good at taking care of plants, which is good, very good. Article 3 made his heart tremble. Those evil god worshippers are indeed not that simple, and this actually involves a battle between demigods. Beings who are above the ordinary and obtain a part of the power of the gods are called demigods. It is only 1 step away from the gods, possessing extremely terrifying power. Fortunately, demigods, like gods, are excluded by the rules of the main plane and cannot enter the main plane. However, the opponent's tentacles have already reached into the swamp, and with the evil god's greed, he will definitely be unscrupulous. The believers of the other party must all be cleared away, and there can only be 1 voice in the swamp. Looking at the 4th item, my mood immediately improved. Haggis is really blessed by the goddess of luck. This is the second time that information directly related to him has appeared. This Wetland Lizardman Hero has been fighting with him and made a lot of achievements, but his level and strength are stuck. Now, the opponent can finally get a wave of enhancements, and what's interesting is that changing jobs to become a cold-blooded cavalry can also activate the second talent. A hero with dual talents. What kind of power will this have? His eyes were filled with anticipation. The last one is the crucial 5-star orange information. Finally, he reached the most important goal of the swamp, authority, which was about to appear. And this time the precise time and place were given, but the information behind made him a little frightened. Level 15 dragons will be attracted by authority. The huge beast that could be called an ancient beast when he just stepped into the swamp suddenly appeared in his mind. Is it that flying dragon? The dragon power exuded by the opponent can make half of the life in the swamp scatter and hide. This terrifying existence actually appears. His eyes became serious. This is definitely an extremely powerful opponent. It's not that simple to take control, but, fortunately, authority will not appear until October 14th. There are still almost 2 months for him to prepare. During this period of time, he must control enough power to challenge a level 15 flying dragon head-on. There is a lot of pressure, but the heart is also full of excitement. Hunt the dragon. So soon will he face the powerful existence that almost suffocated him half a month ago. This challenge made his blood rush again. Finally, he took a deep breath and suppressed the rising emotions in his heart. It's another bumper harvest. Once all this information is realized, Welu City will usher in a new development climax. Go to bed excited. Early the next morning, Lear gathered his army and headed northwest. Iron ore is very important to the territory, and mining it will take time, so it must be collected as soon as possible. You can dig out the corpse of the ancient monster on the way and let Hags be promoted. The distance of 25 kilometers is not short, and the level of exploration in this direction is not high. There is basically no set foot beyond 10 kilometers. Lear was fully prepared and brought Bubble Beast and Swamp Banshee with him. 2 squadrons of Wetland Lizardmen warriors were left in the territory, and the 2-headed ogre chieftain was responsible for the stay today. He didn't want his home to be stolen just after he went out. Lear asked the mud wasps to follow 300 to 500 meters behind and fly at low altitude. To avoid disturbing the enemies in front due to the buzzing sound of the wings, at the same time, some were sent to the front to explore the surroundings with the Wetland Lizardmen scouts. 2 hours later, they had left the territory for more than 10 kilometers. The mud wasps in front suddenly sent an early warning. The enemy was found. Lear immediately perked up. Lead the team to go. After walking about 1 kilometer, they arrived at a low-lying muddy land. They approached secretly, and looked from the woods. Only 200 or 300 meters away, in the mud on the ground, there were hundreds of lives with cruel and crazy eyes. The face was twisted and weird, and the mouth was like the petals of the piranha plant, split in a cross, more than 2 meters tall, gray appearance, with a thick bone armor shell. It looks solid and thick, and it is hard to be hurt by swords. There are 3 claws on the hands, which are as sharp as daggers. It exudes a sense of madness and restlessness, which makes people feel uncomfortable at a glance. It moves strangely and keeps rolling in the mud and hitting the mud. Like the mental state of modern people after get off work and school. Mud Scavenger, level 8, potential, 2 stars, talent, Scavenger, can eat rotten meat to increase its own strength and recover from injuries. Skills, Scavenger Mouth, 2 stars, corrupted body, 2 stars, evaluation, because of the life that has been crazy because of eating rotten meat for many years. It may lose control at any time and even suddenly attack and kill its companions. 2-star potential, level 8 wild monster. Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. A few days ago, these scavengers were strong enemies that he needed to seriously consider how to deal with, but now it is no problem. Hags asked for a fight in a deep voice. Lear waved his hand and looked at the Swamp Banshee. These lives with dual race talents were upgraded to level 7 yesterday. He also wanted to see what was different about the upgraded Swamp Banshee. Seduce them. Let me see the power you have gained from growing up. The Swamp Banshee was refreshed and immediately agreed. She must not embarrass herself in front of her master. She made a slight adjustment, opened her red lips slightly, and a melodious song resounded. It enveloped the entire area. The next moment, the bodies of those level 8 scavenging mud beasts that were still going crazy suddenly stiffened. Their eyes fell into a bit of confusion, and then their faces cried and laughed. They kept making strange sounds of ho ho, ho ho, as if there was phlegm stuck in their throats. These wild monsters were like puppets, taking stiff steps and coming towards the Swamp Banshee. They looked dazed and had no fierce aura at all. Seeing this, Lear took a deep look at the Banshee. There was no need for too much description. The hundreds of controlled level 8 swamp scavengers in front of him had already explained everything. Before, the Swamp Banshee lured high-level monsters, but could only interfere with them for a moment. But now, these monsters are almost in front of them, and there is still no sign of breaking free. After the Swamp Banshee upgraded, it was ridiculously strong. He took a deep breath and looked at the chubby little guy beside him. Bubble Beast, use bubbles to put the scavengers into them one by one, and kill them one by one. The Bubble Beast beside him immediately got excited and puffed up his mouth to blow big bubbles. The big bubbles with a diameter of 3 meters floated down, and silently put the mud scavengers approaching the front into them. Then, the Wetland Lizardman warrior who had been waiting for a long time also slowly entered the bubble with a grin. the hand raised and the knife fell, puff. The huge head took off directly, blood splashed on the bubbles, leaving traces on them and dripping down. All were intercepted by the bubbles, and the Wetland Lizardman warriors inside were stained with blood, but his eyes became more and more excited. This is killing. Then the bubbles stopped moving, and the mud scavengers lined up and walked into the bubbles one by one, because there was no smell of blood. Even the sound was sealed by the bubbles, and it did not affect the outside world at all. A jaw-dropping scene appeared on the field. One by one, the level 8 mud scavengers, extremely ferocious monsters, lined up to enter the bubbles and let the Wetland Lizardmen inside behead them. The Wetland Lizardmen warriors were like executioners. Enter one and cut off a head. It looks like a strange and weird beauty, smooth and silky. Soon, these hundreds of mud scavengers were targeted and eliminated until the end, and they never woke up from the singing. The swamp banshee felt a little bored after shivering. My lord, the emotions they provide are much worse than those provided by the residents of the territory. Let the illusion created by the singing make the other party addicted, and also get the other party's emotions, but compared to the joy, excitement, and sadness from the heart of the residents, it is not even a little bit different. The emotions of the residents are like clear mountain spring water, while these emotions are muddy water scooped out of mud. They are completely different. I didn't feel it before, but now the difference is reflected. Lear smiled, turned his head and looked at the corpse that was already piled with 7 or 8 bubbles, and was very satisfied. If the battle was so simple, it would be comfortable. This is not a battle. This is to harvest wheat. Swamp Banshee, unlimited potential. The army began to clean up the battlefield, but after not finding any spoils, they continued to move forward. Next, they encountered 2 more gathering places of wild monsters, but their levels were not high, all just over level 5. Under the gentle singing of the Swamp Banshee, these lives became spoils and the bubbles in joy. 20 giant bubbles filled with corpses floated in the sky. These were controlled by cute and chubby bubble beasts, which looked very contrasting. So at noon, they finally found the target of this trip: iron ore. When Lear came to this area, he immediately felt something different. The vegetation was sparse, and there was only a thin layer of grass on the ground. When he stepped on the ground, it was not as soft as the silt, but very dry and hard. He asked a Wetland Lizard man beside him to dig down. After lifting the grass, less than half a meter was black iron ore with a distinct metallic color. Steel is an indispensable basic raw material for the development of the territory. Without it, it would be difficult to grow and develop, but now it's different. From today on, my family finally has a mine. I'm in a good mood. Hags, take your people to the iron mine center and search around for cave dwellers hiding nearby. Those lives are very suitable for mining. Yes. Overlord. Hags was inspired and immediately set off to lead people to conduct a carpet search, but unexpectedly, it took more than half an hour to search the entire area, but no movement of cave dwellers was found. This made Lear frown. While thinking, he saw the Swamp Banshee in the corner of his eye, and his eyes lit up, falling into the inertia of thinking. Who said that finding people must be done physically? Mal, use your singing to find the cave dwellers for me. Mal is the oldest sister among the 3 Swamp Banshees, and has always been the backbone of the 3. The Banshees immediately responded, humming wonderful songs with great interest. After a moment, they all looked in one direction, indicating the ground. Master, the cave dwellers are hiding in caves tens of meters deep underground. Good guy, no wonder they can't be found. Can you let them come out by themselves? The Swamp Banshee's singing voice immediately became louder, and the surrounding magic power surged with her singing. A moment later, Lear could feel the ground began to vibrate slightly. The movement extended to the outside, avoiding the iron ore. Puffed 100 meters ahead, the ground soil splashed, and an ugly head with a few sparse hairs slowly poked out of the ground. Then the surrounding soil was quickly dug up by it and crawled out of the mud pit. He was about 1.6 meters tall, but he was hunched over and walked on the ground with his thick forelimbs. The 5 sharp claws were gray-black and hard, with a smooth structure, very suitable for digging the soil. His face was ugly, with only one nose, facing the sky. His skin was light gray with a bit of paleness, like a plant that never sees the sun all day. Cave dweller, level 2, potential 1 star, racial talent. Digging, born for digging. The solidity of the cave dug underground is increased by 30%. Skills, strong forelimbs, 1 star, forelimb strength increased by 40%, evaluation, cave life, good at digging, 1 cave dweller after another climbed out of the mud pit, and then stood stupidly on the ground. Their eyes were hazy, it was as if their souls had been taken away. Seeing this, Lear looked deeply at the swamp banshee again. These lives are really more useful the more they are developed. Using sound to explore is much more useful than sending people to search. Physically. If you can avoid normal searches, you can also avoid sound. Looking at the cave dwellers gathering more and more, I feel very happy. The iron ore was discovered, and the miners brought their own, which is amazing. Chapter 82 Comfortable Harvest, the first mine, treasure hunting, 4,700 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The cavemen kept climbing up from the mud pit for about 20 minutes before stopping. Looking around, there are people standing all around, more than 300 in number. Lear was in a good mood when he saw this. 300 people means 300 labor force. And he was born to dig, and he was born to mine the holy body. They are all treasures, take them. He glanced around and immediately spotted one of the cavemen who was taller and stronger than the other cavemen. The moment he stared at the other person, his attribute panel appeared in his mind. Unexpectedly, this turned out to be a heroic unit. The level has also reached level 3. His hero talent is also very interesting. Caveman specialization. When leading cavemen, the physical recovery speed of all cavemen is increased by 30%, and the digging speed is increased by 20%, this is absolutely amazing. Without them to mine, it would be a waste. Lear thought about it and looked at the caveman hero. The spiritual power surged away, leaving a mark on his soul with a somewhat pale face. The soul strength of a level 3 caveman hero is not as strong as that of a wetland lizardman warrior, but even so, after branding the other party, it still feels like it's overstuffed. There was a bit of dizziness in his eyes. It took a while to recover. Taking a deep breath, she waved her hand to stop the swamp banshee. The singing disappeared, and the cavemen with blurred eyes woke up one by one, but in the next second, I felt cold all over my body, and my 2 limbs were trembling. From the corner of his eye, he saw hundreds of ferocious lizard men looking at them indifferently. Those cruel, cold eyes that showed no emotion were like a pack of hunting wolves. Many cavemen could not bear the pressure and collapsed to the ground uncontrollably. Some even trembled and knelt down to worship directly, with their heads on the ground. Their postures were extremely humble. Please forgive us. Dear sir, I am willing to serve you, don't kill me. Merciful and great being, my life is worthless, I beg you to forgive our sins. That the voices begging for mercy kept coming and going. The fear in his words could not be concealed at all. So timid. Lear's mouth twitched, but he was relieved inside. He doesn't need these cavemen to be warriors. It's easier to control cowardice. He's as stubborn and fearless as the lizard men, which is a headache. While thinking, he looked at the caveman hero in the middle with sweat on his forehead and a panic-stricken face. Sensing his gaze, the other party felt something and immediately fell to his knees with a firm tone. Great Lord, obey your command. All cavemen are at your service. Lear nodded with satisfaction. Very well, I like to deal with smart people. As he spoke, he looked closely at the caveman hero. Tell me your name. The other party raised his head slightly and said loudly. Tone, salute you. Tone. Get up and come over here. I have something to ask. The caveman hero then stood up carefully and quickly approached. Great Lord, please give me your orders. Lear motioned to the ground beneath his feet. I need to mine the iron ore beneath my feet, can you do it? The caveman hero nodded. Master, digging is our talent. No matter how hard the ore is, it can't stop our sharp claws. There was a bit of pride in his tone. Lear took a look at the other party's extraordinarily thick arms and strangely shaped claws that were specially designed for digging. Smile happily, that's how it should be. After thinking for a while, he continued. What do you usually eat? This place is not close to the city of Welu, so it is a bit difficult to support them with the resources of the territory. It's best to be like the people of Delsa, who can rely on plant roots for food. Bring your own dry food, and don't worry about it. Tone said immediately. There are many bugs growing underground, and there are also some unique underground plants. And no one is trying to fight us. That the tone was very excited. Lear found it interesting that there was little competition underground, so you guys went underground. This is considered to have opened up a new path, right? Theory of evolution of life. Can this area support all the cavemen? Yes, you only need to hunt for 1 to 2 hours a day. Lear felt much better. If you can support yourself, you don't need him to provide logistics. This saves a lot of effort and resources. How much ore can you mine every day? We have tried to dig holes and build nests in it before. Although the iron ore is hard, each of us can mine at least 300 kilograms per day. Lear has never mined, has no comparison, and does not know whether this data is more or less, but if there are more than 300 people on the other side, then based on 300 kilograms, 90,000 kilograms of ore can be produced that day, that is, 90 tons of ore. This data should be pretty good. Go back and ask Bane, this swamp hero should know better. Tone, can you control your people? Great Lord, half of them are my descendants, they will definitely obey orders. Half of them are your descendants. Lear glanced at the large area of black cavemen, the corners of his mouth twitched. You can really give birth. Okay, I will appoint you as the CEO of the Welu City Mine. You will lead the cavemen to mine iron ore. The mined ore is piled up on the surface, and I will come to transport it once a week. Thinking, he waved his hand, and a dozen swamp wasps fell from the sky. These are swamp wasps. You will weave a cage and raise them with insects later. Once you encounter danger, release them, and they will go back to report the news. I will lead the army to rescue, that there is no need to worry about the safety of the lives hidden underground. If it weren't for the swamp banshee, he might not be able to enslave the other party. The other party found a threat and drilled underground. Unless you can drill into the ground like them, you can only stare blankly. The earth is the best shield. Torn looked at the swamp wasps like a treasure and shouted excitedly. Yes, great master. Your will is supreme. This is a life-saving straw. His chest subconsciously straightened a little. From now on, these humble underground lives will also be accepted by someone and have a backer. Praise the goddess. Lear smiled and turned to look at the ground. The only thing that bothered him was that the city of Welu did not have the ability to smelt steel now. It would be difficult to use the ore after 10 days or half a month. After returning, we have to start building a blacksmith shop. At this time, Thorn whispered. Great Lord, can I tell the tribesmen the good news that you are willing to accept our surrender? Lear laughed. So, I am so happy to let you mine for me. Innate holy body of ox and horse. Go. After getting the nod, Thorn immediately turned and came to the front of the trembling caveman who was being coldly watched by the Wetland Lizardman. He said loudly. Great Lord, just accepted our surrender. In the future, we will be blessed by the Lord and be protected by the warriors around us. People, we are no longer alone. The caveman below suddenly made a commotion, looking at the caveman hero in disbelief. Would anyone be willing to accept these lowly beings who live in the caves and dare not even look at the sun? And they are a force with so many powerful wetland lizard warriors. Their eyes were fixed on the caveman hero, and at the same time they carefully glanced at Lear, as if they wanted to get confirmation from him. Sensing the caveman's gaze, Lear strode forward, stood behind Thorn, and swept his majestic eyes around. Endless divine power surged out of his body. The caveman felt his body cold and his blood solidified. Plop! All of them collapsed to the ground uncontrollably, trembling. That was the pressure from the depths of the blood, the great terror that went straight to the soul. Even a dragon would have to bow its head, and these humble lives could not resist at all. Under the majestic momentum, a calm and heavy voice like a mountain slowly sounded. I accept your allegiance in the name of the Lord of the Mud Swamp and the Lord of the City of Weir. From today on, all cave dwellers will become my people and work for me. I will provide you with food and clean water, and protect your safety. This swamp is ruled by the City of Weir. Work hard for me, and no one can bully you anymore. In addition, every other week, I will reward some hardworking people and let them go to the City of Weir for vacation and watch the great drama. The cave dwellers were suddenly excited, feeling the surging pressure. They were full of excitement and panic. Really, this powerful human lord is willing to accept their allegiance and protect them. For the weak cave dwellers, even if they live underground, they lack a sense of security. Being protected by the strong is like injecting a tonic into the heart. The sense of security has increased greatly. Seeing this, Lear slowly restrained the pressure. It was originally to support this cave hero, and he would still be in charge of these subordinates in the future, ignoring the still excited underground life. He looked at the equally excited caveman hero beside him. Torn, is there any powerful existence nearby? That the other party shook his head and said with some shame. Master, we have been living underground and don't know much about the surroundings. When they encounter enemies, the first thing they think of is to hide, hiding deep underground. How could they come out to see who it is? The earth is their best shelter. Lear was not surprised. This is very caveman. Back to the topic. Do you need tools to mine the veins? Our claws are the best tools. That the caveman hero was a little proud. This might be the only thing they can show off. Lear smiled and said nothing more. Directly let Thorn arrange the caveman to go down and start mining. In this way, he occupied the first vein of the city of Wei Lu, and at the same time had enough miners, and the price he paid was almost zero. These cavemen didn't even need him to provide food. It's comfortable for workers to bring their own dry food. After this, it's time for today's second gold dash. The body of the monster buried underground 30 kilometers west of the territory can increase Hags' potential to 3 stars. Lear thought about it, waved his hand and called 100 cave dwellers to follow the army. When it comes to digging holes, no one is better than them. The caveman followed with some excitement and some fear. After leaving Tone in charge of the arrangements, Lear did not stay and left directly with the army. Keep marching. With the guidance of the magic map, it is easy to know the direction. After walking for about half an hour, the lizard people in the wetland ahead sent back news that they were encountering enemies ahead. After hunting more often, the army has now developed a skilled response pattern. Once an enemy is discovered, he will try his best to detect it if he can find out the specific number and strength. If the enemy is strong, they will immediately retreat and report the news to avoid alerting the enemy, then use the fastest speed to gather all the information to Lear. And then he will make a decision based on the intelligence. The whole process is efficient, direct and smooth to the point of silky smoothness. When Lear arrived at the front, he immediately saw a giant insect that was 4 meters long and more than 1 meter tall, with a gray-black hard-shell skin and a body covered with moss. These creatures, like vegetable worms, are gnawing at the water plants below in the muddy water. Seeing these frowning beings, he immediately thought of the ancient swamp life that was still chewing mud in the city of Dew, the flower of the north, Felena, who had given him a gift from the ancient swamp, mudworm. The little guy has grown from the size of a thumb to the thickness of an arm. He either eats mud or sleeps every day. During this period of time, there is no sense of existence at all. According to the current progress, if the other party wants to recover, it will take a long time to chew on the mud. Looking at it carefully, the attributes of those bugs appeared in my mind. Swamp bugs, level 6, potential 2 stars. The level is not high, there are about 50 or 60 of them, but such large bugs squirming in the mud look a bit disgusting. Lear subconsciously looked at the swamp banshee. Do it. A soft song sounded. Under the surprised gaze of the caveman behind, the terrifying swamp bugs squirmed stiffly in this direction as if they had been deprived of their souls. My heart was full of horror. No wonder they crawled out of the ground for no reason. It turned out to be the power of these banshees. Fortunately, the master accepted them, otherwise all of them would have shuddered. Swamp worms are approaching quickly, but Bubbleman's bubbles can't hold them. They're too big. It cannot be executed silently like other lives. Lear's spikes are also unambiguous. Order 4 or 5 wetland lizardmen to stand next to each head. When ready, wave and order the execution. The steel knives and sharp claws were waved in unison. The terrifying pain struck, and the insect suddenly woke up from the singing, just about to resist, but the next moment, the head was cut off and the head was torn apart. Blood spurts. 2 or 3 were not executed directly and were killed in the second round of attacks. There was no time to resist. Lear glanced at the swamp banshee again. These banshees are so easy to use. With them here, the efficiency of the battle has been greatly improved. The true harvest of flesh and blood is faster than harvesting wheat. To cultivate hard. At the end of the battle, Bubblemon skillfully blew up bubbles and put all the swamp bugs in them. 2 or 3 swamp worms can completely fill a bubble, leaving no gaps in their plump bodies. Each of these level 8 magic beings controls more than 5 bubbles. They turned into a transport fleet, collecting all the loot. Continuing to move forward, they encountered another gathering place of wild monsters, a group of dirty wild boars, outnumbered by 2 squadrons, but unexpectedly, these Quillboar people are immune to the song of the swamp banshee. As the song rang out, the wild boar man remained motionless, as if he were playing the harp to a cow. These swamp monsters are also quite novel. Lear was also unambiguous when he saw this, directly. Let the 3 squadrons of wetland lizard warriors in your hand launch an attack. Hags leads the way. Under the advantage of quantity and grade, the opponent was quickly slaughtered, but the wild boars were indeed ferocious, and no matter how heavy the casualties were, they still did not retreat even half a step. After killing them all, the Bubbleman's bubbles increased to 80, with each person controlling an average of 10. His face was no longer relaxed, the bubbles no longer flew to high altitudes, but fell directly to the ground and began to roll forward. Bubblemon can control up to 30 bubbles, but air bubbles and filled bubbles are completely different concepts. But looking at the trophies full of loot, Lear felt quite happy. There is some truth in the saying that there is a gold belt for murder and arson. Looting from outside can accumulate a lot of wealth in a short period of time. However, this is not a sustainable development. It is impossible for these wild monsters to appear out of thin air the next day after killing them. They need time to reproduce. In the future, the size of the territory will gradually expand. It is unrealistic to rely solely on hunting to meet the needs. In the end, farming will be the only way to solve the problem of territory development, but this does not prevent him from making a fortune first. Finally, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we arrived at the area full of red flowers, the burial place of the monsters, as indicated by the intelligence. After confirming that there was nothing wrong in the area, he didn't hesitate and asked the caveman to start digging in the ground. This area covers an area of 200 to 300 meters in diameter. It is not easy to find the body of unknown size and unknown depth underground. Let the wetland lizard warriors dig it out, and I'm afraid it will be difficult to find it within 3 to 5 days. But now, he has cavemen. All he needs to do is wait for these humanoid excavators to work. Looking at the busy crowd, Lear's mood became very bright. As a lord, it's really good. This kind of hard work, just a word and subordinates will do it for you. Chapter 83 Mysterious Bronze Coffin, Transformation, 5,200 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The digging posture of the cave dwellers is very eye-catching. Their sturdy arms have great strength, and their bodies will bend slightly when digging to exert better force. The claws at the front are uniquely constructed, and with the blessing of great strength, they can easily dig up the soil. The claws swing backwards, and the soil flies along, digging diagonally down the ground. In just a few minutes, the cave dwellers disappeared from sight. Only the soil can be seen being dug out of the hole. The efficiency is extremely high. These strange underground creatures have a unique breathing method, and they are not afraid of suffocation even in a narrow cave. Hundreds of humanoid excavators started, and after 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and an hour, the surface was destroyed in the blink of an eye. This surface full of red flowers turned into a mess. Starting from noon, 2 hours have passed, and when the sun began to set in the west, there is still no trace of the body of the monster. The area 20 meters deep has been searched almost all over. Nothing was found. Lear opened up his senses, but still couldn't find any traces of it. If he couldn't find it in the shallow underground, he could only dig deeper. He was prepared to spend more time, but at this moment, he saw Hags standing guard. He was moved, and with the idea of trying, he called him and said directly, "Hags, there is a corpse of a monster that can help you advance. You can try to sense it and see if you can sense its location." The Wetland Lizardman Hero nodded solemnly. "Yes, Lord." That he slowly closed his eyes, and his blood surged, like a flame burning on his body. He used his mental power to sense the surroundings to the greatest extent. After a moment, his eyes suddenly opened sharply, pointing in a certain direction, and his tone was full of excitement. "Lord, I sensed it. It's in that area, buried about 50 meters underground." That it really worked. Lear was in a good mood and immediately prepared to let the cave dwellers concentrate on digging, but before he gave the order, the cave dwellers next to him made a commotion. He was still shouting, "I dug it, I dug it." He looked at the Lizardman Hero. Didn't he sense it? How did he dig it? Hags looked a little embarrassed. Was he wrong? He turned his head and looked. He saw a large group of cave dwellers gathering together and digging in one direction frantically. The soil splashed, and the speed was as fast as digging rice in a rice jar. 10 minutes later, hundreds of cave dwellers worked together to dig a huge deep pit. Then a large number of people rushed down, and there were constant exclamations from below, and they lifted it out with force. Lear stood not far away and was very interested. What exactly does the body of the monster look like? After a moment, his face changed slightly. At this moment, the cave dwellers below had already emerged and gradually climbed out of the deep pit. The things they dug were gradually revealed, but it was not the expected body of the monster. Instead, it was a rusty bronze coffin with strange patterns carved on it, which made people feel inexplicably cold. Lear had a question mark on his face. I asked you to find the body, but you came to rob the tomb. With the joint efforts of the cave dwellers, they quickly lifted out the giant coffin with a length of 5 meters and a width of 3 meters. Under the sun, the rusty bronze color looked even more ancient, and the mysterious patterns on it were full of traces of history. It gave people a mysterious, majestic, and inviolable feeling. With a frown on his face, Lear looked at it intently. Unexpectedly, the intelligence system in his mind only showed very brief information. Mysterious bronze coffin. There was only one name, and it was prefixed with mysterious, and all the information behind it was question marks. His eyes condensed. He immediately stepped closer and stopped within 30 meters. He mobilized the swamp godhood suppressed in the magic vortex, and the vast divine power like the starry sky surged out and covered the bronze coffin. The next moment, the coffin trembled suddenly, as if in fear. Is this coffin afraid? Is there a living thing inside? Lear was slightly shocked, but the coffin trembled for a few breaths, and then quickly calmed down. No matter how turbulent his divine power was, it did not react. It was as if it was just an illusion just now, and nothing happened. This coffin must be hiding something. While thinking, he waved his hand to let the cavemen open it, but they explored the coffin for a long time and did not find any gaps. The last caveman leader could only step forward helplessly and whispered, "Great Lord, this coffin is directly cast in one piece without opening or closing." Lear waved his hand to let them stop their actions. His spirit escaped and wanted to explore it, but the coffin was like a mountain, isolating all perceptions. No matter how hard he pressed, he could not penetrate the thick barrier. In the end, he could only give up. What exactly is hidden in this thing? The more he couldn't explore, the more curious he was. The only thing that reassured him was that he did not sense the threat from the coffin. Instead, he could sense that the bronze coffin was faintly afraid of him. After thinking for a while, he waved his hand and asked Hags to use force directly. "Try to see if you can break it directly." Hags immediately responded and stepped forward with a steel knife in hand. The muscles in his arms bulged instantly, and he held the steel knife tightly with both hands, exerting force with his whole body. The blade violently split down and hit the coffin hard. Swish crack. Sparks flew everywhere, and the steel knife was directly broken and a striking gap appeared on the blade. The bronze that didn't look strong was like an indestructible heavy shield. Not even a mark was left. So strong. Lear's eyes changed again. Can't force it. Still unwilling, he waved his hand to let the swamp banshee beside him try. The banshee was also not vague, but she sang for a long time but got nothing. The coffin was still a coffin, without any movement. It seemed that their singing, like facing the wild boar, had lost its soul-stirring charm. Seeing this, Lear could only give up for the time being. Take it first, and return to the territory to study it in detail. He asked the caveman and Hags to dig up the body of the monster first, and he continued to observe, trying to see any clues. Half an hour later, the cave dwellers made another noise, and finally dug out a dried giant lizard corpse from the ground. It was amazing that it could be dried in the swamp instead of rotting. Lear, who had nothing to gain, could only give up temporarily and came to the front of the corpse. He could feel its surging energy as soon as he approached. He didn't know how many years it had been dead, but it was still so rich. No wonder Hags could sense that the other party was a big lizard. Even if it was dried, he could vaguely see the horror in front of him. The body length alone reached 6 meters. This is the current state of shrinkage. Hags was so excited at this moment. Master. This was another opportunity for him to be promoted. The last time was more than a month ago. Both times were the power given to him by the master, his eyes were full of enthusiasm, he would use everything he had to serve the master. Lear smiled with satisfaction. Carry this body and the bronze coffin back. He looked at the sky and it was already dark. The cave dwellers were not allowed to go to the iron mines anymore, so they were allowed to follow the army back to the territory. About 30 cave dwellers carried the bronze coffin, and 7 or 8 carried the dried lizard corpses. Return immediately. As the sky darkened, everyone sped up. This area had not been explored before, and they encountered 2 wild monster gathering places on the way back. Lear was too lazy to do anything messy, and with a wave of his hand, the muddy wasps behind him surged down like a tide, instantly drowned the enemy. The battle lasted no more than 3 minutes, and then the Wetland Lizardmen picked up the corpses and left. After 2 waves, more than 100 corpses were obtained as trophies. After hurriedly rushing on the road, it was already completely dark when they returned to the territory. The residents in the territory had already eaten dinner. Baines saw the movement outside and immediately brought people out to greet them. "Good night, sir." After saying that, he looked at the cave dwellers carrying the bronze coffins with some surprise. New labor force. "What is this bronze coffin?" Lear waved his hand. "Let someone take the cavemen down for dinner first. Today, we found an iron mine outside. There are more than 300 cavemen living nearby. I have conquered them. The cavemen will become our miners in the future. Take them to the iron mine tomorrow. Let's take a rest today." He pointed his eyes at the bronze coffin behind him. "Do you know what era the pattern on it belongs to?" "Sir, I don't know about ancient civilizations." Baines smiled bitterly. He was just a swamp man. It took his whole life to become a hero. Even if he wanted to learn this knowledge, there was no place to learn it. This coffin was dug out from the ground by the cavemen. It was handed over to the swamp tree man for guarding. There is probably still life inside. Baines' heart trembled. What kind of existence would it be if there was life in this coffin that had been buried underground for who knows how long? His tone became solemn. "Yes, sir." Lil didn't say much, and turned to look at the cute little guy beside him. "Bobo, put the bodies you brought in the swamp tree man area first, I will arrange it later." After waiting for these little guys to go down, Lear signaled the wetland lizard warriors. "Send all the bodies you brought to the east, the area where the little lizards are imprisoned. The body of the monster has been found, and the next step is to let Hags be promoted when he changes his job to become a cold-blooded cavalry, and activate the double talent at the same time. In this way, he can have another powerful fighting force in his hands. Before the authority appears, the stronger the power in his hands, the more confident he is." A series of orders were issued, and everyone began to get busy. Lil and the wetland lizard man, with the flesh and blood bodies, came to the area where the little lizards were fed. The little lizard that was half a meter long before has now grown to more than 1 meter long, and the height has reached 60 to 70 centimeters. The front legs have completely mutated and no longer bear the responsibility of walking. Long claws grow on them, becoming a ferocious weapon. The responsibility of carrying the body was completely taken over by the hind legs. The 2 hind legs were already very strong and stepped firmly on the ground. The corpse had been eaten before, and the amber eyes were now full of desire and looking around. After seeing Haggis coming, he immediately approached excitedly. He stretched out his barbed tongue to lick him. Haggis touched the other's head with satisfaction, stretched out his right hand, and the sharp claws cut his palm, and blood dripped wildly. The little lizard opened his mouth, caught it all, and drank it. When the aura on his body began to be violent, Haggis stopped. Seeing this, Lear waved his hand and asked the wetland lizard man next to him to throw the corpse of the wild monster over. Hundreds of corpses piled up into a small hill in an instant. The lizard shouted happily and rushed to eat a big piece of meat, as if it had been hungry for more than 10 days. Its eating posture was so crazy that it was shocking. Then a surprising scene appeared. As the other party ate, the body began to grow and become stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye, like a balloon that was blown up. Seeing this, Haggis's eyes flashed with excitement. "Master, it has triggered the power deep in its blood. As long as the food supply is sufficient, it can transform into a swift lizard tonight." Lear's eyes were also full of expectations. Is the first cold-blooded cavalry about to be born? pointing to the dried lizard corpse placed aside. "Devour him and complete the transformation with the swift lizard." "Yes, master." Hags did not hesitate at all, strode forward, and sat cross-legged in front of the shriveled lizard. The blood and chi in his body surged out, directly covering the corpse that exuded great power. The next moment, his body trembled, and he felt the surging power like a mountain pouring into his body, instantly filled with energy. Every tendon and muscle was bulging. Ah! Hags was caught off guard, and his throat let out a low roar like a beast, and his face became extremely hideous in pain. This transformation was not smooth sailing. The swift lizard next to him sensed the pain of his master who was fused with his blood at the moment, and his throat also let out a low roar. He buried his head suddenly and devoured the flesh and blood on the ground more frantically. There began to be a vague connection between the two. Lear asked the army to be on guard around, to prevent anyone from disturbing them. After seeing that there would be no changes in the short term, he turned and came to the swamp tree man. At this moment, the corpses brought back by the bubble beast have been piled up next to the flesh slaughterer, but he has not received his order yet, so he did not devour them. Lear asked Bobo, who had not left yet, to move the corpses of the swamp bugs to the side, just in case. As a hero unit, the energy required for Hag's transformation is definitely not that simple, especially with the double enhancement of the job transfer to cold-blooded cavalry. Keep a backup, and you can calmly deal with any accidents. While the little guy was busy, he looked at the swamp treeman. "Take out the mosquito queen and feed her corpse. I need 200 blood essences." The roots of the swamp treeman curled up under the trunk slowly pulled out and spread out like 5 fingers. The mosquito queen, with wings exposed, feet all broken, roots pierced into the flesh, and was firmly controlled. This ferocious life has become a simple production tool, a biological mind that can continuously produce blood essence. The swamp tree man used his roots to control the other party to move forward, and on the other side, he used his roots to roll up the corpse on the ground, and used the mosquito queen's mouthparts to penetrate the flesh and blood. The mouthparts secreted a unique corrosive solution, which quickly turned the corpse into blood and water. Subconsciously sucking, in just a few breaths, the flesh and bones were all devoured cleanly. After feeding 20 or 30 corpses in a row, more than 200 pieces of blood essence were obtained. Feeling its surging life energy, Lear felt more at ease. The matter was over, and he waved his hand to let the swamp tree man put away the mosquito queen. The roots immediately gathered, layer by layer, and completely wrapped the mosquito queen in the tree roots. Then it was placed back at the bottom of the trunk. From the outside, it was impossible to see that a level 13 ferocious life would be imprisoned here. As long as this swamp tree man did not die, the mosquito queen would never escape control in this life. After Lear came to his senses, he looked at the bronze coffin that was particularly eye-catching on the side. He pointed his finger at the swamp tree man in front of him. "You 5 will use your roots to bind this coffin together and guard it day and night. No one can call it without my order." When their names were called, the 5 swamp tree men that were close to each other immediately pulled out their roots from the ground. Then they jointly lifted the bronze coffin and slowly brought it back to the central area. The 5 swamp tree men used their roots to weave and wrap it together, completely wrapping it up. Then they slowly sank into the ground. The ground was then covered with soil turned over by other roots. In this way, there was no trace of the bronze coffin. Seeing this, Lear felt a little better. These swamp tree men had a low presence before, but now it seems that the benefits of being unable to move are also great. The other party has become a substantial prison and treasure house of the city of Weirdo. These treasures are not as safe as being wrapped by tree roots anywhere else. And what's interesting is that the swamp treeman that imprisoned the mosquito queen has obviously increased its aura recently. The other party has absorbed a lot of power from the mosquito queen's body. If things keep going this way, maybe it won't be long before the other party will be promoted, which is an extra benefit. These 3-star potential lives have a maximum level of 12, if they are all promoted to the top. This is definitely a strong force, and it will be very comfortable to be used as a guardian of the treasure house. After calming down, he looked at the swamp queen bee who had been sleeping for a few days. After the other party was injured in the origin, he was forcibly saved by dozens of healing spells. Now, it is still recovering, and there is no sign of waking up in the short term. Shaking his head, he stopped thinking and waved his hand to let the corpses left for the flesh and blood slaughterer be fed to this divine life. After the other party devoured them in an instant, he felt hungry again, but he could feel that the flesh and blood slaughterer's emotions were more obvious, the effect of feeding was remarkable, and the results of hunting were not in vain. In a good mood, he asked Bobo to take the remaining corpses and return to the swift lizard that was devouring flesh and blood. In the short 20 minutes he was away, 7 or 8 of the hundreds of corpses were eaten. Its body size was also obviously 2 circles larger. The speed of metamorphosis was exaggerated. When Bobo brought over 50 or 64-meter-long swamp worm corpses, Lear also felt confident. I want to see how much you can eat. 2 hours later, the shoulder height of the swift lizard had grown to an exaggerated 2 meters. The skin on his body was full of wrinkles like an old tree, and his eyes were full of madness and violence. The front paws were bent like razors, and the thick hind legs stepped steadily on the ground. At this moment, this ferocious beast slowly stretched its head towards the corpse of the swamp worm and began to eat it. Seeing this, Lear took a deep breath. It seemed that the situation had changed a little. The appetite of this swift lizard was more exaggerated than he had imagined. These hundreds of corpses were directly eaten by the opponent, and it was not enough. Looking at the opponent's crazy swallowing, expectation also rose in his eyes. How powerful can a soldier who can only transform after swallowing so much flesh and blood be? As the night deepened, he did not go to rest, but watched the swift lizard swallow 40 swamp worms. In the early hours of the morning, the opponent's shoulder height exceeded 3 meters. Finally, at this moment, the opponent reached the limit. The swift lizard roared to the sky, then walked to the side of Hags, who was still sleeping, slowly lay on the ground, protected the opponent in his arms, and fell asleep. The blood and energy in Hags' body quietly extended a little, covering the swift lizard. The two began to transform deeply together. Chapter 84, Guardian of the Desolate Grave, Grandma Green Grass, 4,800 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the surging energy was continuously devoured by Hags, the shrunken lizard corpse crumbled into slag bit by bit, until it finally turned into a pile of debris. The painful expression on the face of the lizard hero became more and more distorted, and the majestic energy almost burst him. The pain of tearing flesh and soul, even if you have the talent of fearlessness of pain, you can't avoid it at all, Hags roared. And his body twitched and slowly fell on the swift mad lizard, and his head pressed on its heart intentionally or unintentionally. The blood and chi burned like flames, covering both of them. Then his eyes slowly closed, and his breath fell into a deep sleep in the agitation. If someone else were to undergo this transformation, even the two-headed ogre chieftain, I'm afraid it would be a disaster. Seeing this, Lear took out the blood essence that the mosquito queen had just produced. Placed it not far from their side, just enough to be touched by the blood and chi. Then he was quite happy to see that the blood and chi enveloped the blood essence, and the blood essence evaporated and shrank little by little, transformed into energy and poured into his body. However, the speed was not very fast, and it was obvious that the previous energy consumption was almost saturated, but it was better than nothing. And perhaps this little bit of energy at the end could allow the other party to take a step forward. After staring for a long time, he confirmed that Hags could not complete the transformation in a short time, so he did not stay for long. After ordering the Wetland Lizardmen around to keep a close watch and not allow anyone to disturb him, he turned back to his tent. He occupied the mine, enslaved the cave dwellers, found an unexpected bronze coffin underground, and finally let Hags transform. After running around all day today, he was also a little tired, but after completing these 2 intelligence, he made a lot of money. Having his own iron ore means that future weapons, armor and daily use can be satisfied, and there are cave dwellers and other miners who bring their own dry food, so he doesn't need to invest much energy. Just wait for the harvest. Hags' side can let him get a powerful 3-star hero, and the opponent will activate the second talent when he transforms. He will even be transferred to become the legendary Lizardman troop, the cold-blooded cavalry. With this series of superpositions, he is looking forward to how powerful he will be when he wakes up. Lear needs to be as strong as possible when the authority appears on August 14th, when he will face the 16th level flying dragon. After washing, when he lay down to rest, he heard the sound of the swamp banshees rehearsing faintly in his ears. These magical life forms have a special structure and do not need to rest like humans. They only need to swallow a little emotion every day to maintain their state. This allows them to have enough time to rehearse at night. Drama is not only a performance, but also a way to make oneself stronger. Lear did not pay much attention to it and fell asleep in a moment. on the morning of the 21st, he went to see Hags as soon as he got up. The hero and his swift lizard were still sleeping, there was no change in posture, but he could clearly feel that the breath of both had increased significantly. The lizardmen around looked over here frequently, their eyes full of anxiety, as if they were guarding a giant dragon that might wake up at any time. At this rate, perhaps by night, they will be able to complete the transformation. His eyes relaxed. He didn't look at it for long, and immediately called the army. Today's goal is the second intelligence, 35 kilometers southeast, a group of swamp life green grass grandmothers grow in a field of reeds. They are very good at taking care of plants and have a connection with vine fairies. The value of 3 stars is enough to explain everything. Lear brought 2 vine fairies with him on this trip. Since those green grass grandmothers have a relationship with these chubby little guys, it might be better to let them communicate. 3 squadrons of wetland lizardmen, 50,000 muddy wasps, bubble beasts, swamp banshees, and 2 vine fairies. Fully armed, there are warriors who fight normally, assassins with high attack and thin blood, mages who provide long-range support, warlocks who are seductive, and Lear, the nurse. This is the configuration for brushing dungeons. The 2-headed ogre chieftain had stayed in the territory to protect hags who had not yet woken up. The army gathered and set off immediately. As he explored more and more, the intelligence system also expanded the intelligence to the outer area of the swamp. A 35-kilometer journey is 70 kilometers round trip, so he had to hurry up. Otherwise a few battles would delay the journey. Life in the swamp would become active at night, and the danger would increase significantly. Before he completely controlled the swamp, he was unwilling to take too many risks. When he first entered the swamp, everything was new to him, but in more than half a month, Lear had gotten used to the scenery here and kept on going. 2 hours later, when he stepped out of the territory 10 kilometers away, the mud wasp in front sent a message. Unknown enemies were found. Lear's eyes condensed slightly, and he immediately led the army there. After walking about 1 kilometer forward, a wide muddy field appeared in front of him, with only sparse weeds growing on it. Looking across the muddy field, a group of very familiar lives appeared in front of him. There were huge curved and forked horns on their heads, and green moss was attached to the surface. Their bodies were covered with plum blossom-like spots, which were quite delicate. Their eyes were dark, large, and alert. These creatures raised their heads at this moment and looked at them motionlessly. Their eyes were rolling around, with some vigilance and some curiosity. Swamp giant deer. Lear recognized these creatures immediately. When I first arrived at the swamp, I encountered these lives on the day I got the vine fairy. I didn't expect to meet them again. He immediately searched among the deer. Where is the giant horned deer king with 4-star potential and level 12? The other party's heroic figure left a deep impression on him. After a glance, he soon found the trace of the target. Behind the giant horned deer, a sturdy male deer that was much taller than the other giant horned deer was staring at them. Its shoulder height was more than 3.5 meters. Like a giant statue, the last time he encountered it, the other party's shoulder height was only 3 meters. Looking carefully, the other party's attribute panel showed that the level had been raised to level 13. It was still level 12 last time, and it has only been half a month. This deer king is still getting stronger. The swamp giant horned deer king also noticed Lear's gaze at this moment. After staring at him for a while, he looked up at the dark mass of mud wasps in the sky with some vigilance. More than 50,000 of them formed a terrifying black tide. No one would want to face such a scale of insect tide. Lear took a deep look at the other party, waved his hand decisively, and left with the army. I'm not sure, the level 13 hero, with a series of gorgeous attributes of the other party. These 50,000 swamp wasps rushing over are not enough to fill the gaps in the other parties. Teeth, especially the other party's talent, can turn into an illusion, completely immune to physical damage, and can also reduce 70% of magic damage. Isn't this like turning on invincibility? Compared with before, the Mosquito Queen of the same level is far inferior. I can only become stronger in the future and come again, but I am full of confidence in this. Half a month ago, when he found the swamp giant horned deer, there were only wetland lizard warriors and vine fairies, and 2 or 3 big and small cats around him. Now, the power he controls has increased by more than 10 times. In another month or 2, the offensive and defensive situation will be reversed. Leave this area and speed up. After walking for more than 20 minutes, there was a roar of lizardmen dash enemy attack. Lear's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately accelerated to rush over. When he arrived, he found that the Wetland Lizardman who was exploring the way ahead was pale and bloodless, standing in the distance, staring at a place. Lear looked intently. He saw a group of translucent monsters holding curved sickles and emitting dark blue light floating in the air. They exude a death energy that makes people palpitate. This is a group of unique undead life-ghost. These undead are floating on a circular tomb covered with weeds and covering an area of more than 10 meters in diameter. The face is facing him. Grave Guard, level 9, potential, 3 stars, racial talent, undead ghost, born in a grave, can be resurrected in a grave after death. Skills, invisible body, 2 stars, immune to 90% physical damage and can penetrate entities. Soul Scythe, 2 stars. The sickle in hand can directly attack the enemy's soul. Evaluation, they were born to guard the graves of some powerful lives. Level 9 undead. Lear took a deep breath and looked at its talent deeply. Undead ghost, after death, it can be resurrected in the grave. This is the most perverted racial talent he has seen so far, and there is no limit on the number of deaths. This means that the opponent can be resurrected continuously. Sensing their approach, dense ghosts floated from the round grave covered with weeds. Looking around, there are more than 300. Lear looked at the densely packed undead, and his scalp was a little numb, waved his hand and asked the army to retreat immediately. There are more than 300, and the level is not low. They can be resurrected, and the most fatal thing is that they can be immune to 90% of physical damage. What's the point of fighting? Even if these undead are cleared, there is still the seemingly inconspicuous grave below. God knows what is buried in it. Those blue-colored graveyard guards holding sickles silently watched them evacuate without moving. Until they were about to disappear from sight, they drifted into the tomb one by one. In the blink of an eye, there was no ghost in the tomb anymore. Only the desolate tomb with weeds on the top was left, waiting for the next unsuspecting outsider to approach. After leaving this area, the army continued to move forward. Half an hour later, they encountered the second wild monster. A group of bison with horns on their heads. They were strong and reached a height of 2 meters and 5. They mooed, and their skin was particularly thick and rough, but although the bison were strong, they were not immune to physical damage. Seeing this, Lear directly ordered the whole army to press forward. The army rushed forward like a tide. The bubble beast made bubble bombs to disrupt the formation. The swamp banshee used her singing to make the bison lost. The wetland lizard warriors went straight ahead, and the muddy wasps whistled down from the sky like arrows. All the armies joined forces to strangle them, and the bison had just reacted when they were submerged. They fell down one by one amidst the painful roars. The thick cowhide could not stop the sting of the swamp wasp, nor the sharp claws and steel knives of the wetland lizardmen. Looking at the corpses all over the ground, Lear felt relieved. He waved his hand and asked the bubble beast to collect the corpses. Looking at the blood and flesh all over the ground, he thought of the grave guards again. The appearance of these ghosts made him alert. In the future, we have to find a way to control a powerful mage army. When physical damage cannot help the opponent, there are additional means. Although bubble beasts are extraordinary, their functions are more functional. Bubble bomb is the only magic damage skill. Compared with the orthodox mage, it is still a bit less interesting. After the battlefield is cleared, the battle continues. There were a lot of wild monsters in this area, and then we encountered 3 more wild monster gathering places. However, they were all annihilated under Lear's blade and became the spoils of war in the bubble. By noon, Lear unfolded the magic map and turned to look around. Looking at the lush reeds growing all around, he waved the army to stop. The mood is quite exciting. It's here. The vine fairy resting on his shoulder now flapped its wings and flew up. Circle around you. There was some curiosity and confusion on his face. Father God, there is a familiar smell around here. Have we been here before? The big dark eyes were full of doubts, and combined with the chubby face, this little fairy the size of a fist looked indescribably cute at the moment. Lear was also impressed, chuckled. Do you know Granny Greengrass? Granny Greengrass? The 2 vine fairies looked at each other, then shook their heads together. I don't know. Never heard of it. With the fall of the swamp god, many lives created by him have disappeared, and the relationship between them has long been washed away by time and is no longer close. Some even go their entire lives without knowing that there are beings similar to themselves, created by the swamp god. Grandma Greengrass is similar to you. The Vine Fairy's eyes were still a little confused. Lear looked at the reed in front of him, his eyes moving slightly. He has a connection with the Vine Fairy, so can he be conquered directly like the Vine Fairy? After speaking, he pondered for a moment and strode forward. The divine power surged up from his body and covered him directly. Wowed at a large number of birds were startled among the reeds. The screams of fear echoed far away. After the birds flew away, the field suddenly became quiet. For a moment, the reeds inside swayed and gradually reached the outside. Lear watched all this silently, and his inner expectation reached its peak at this moment. Wowed at the reeds at the front were opened. A strange figure slowly walked out of the reeds, looking at Lear with curiosity, excitement and disbelief. I want to get closer, but I am afraid that I will admit my mistake. He is only 1.5 meters tall, and his hair is not that of ordinary people, but is covered with reeds. The flowers are fluffy and white, and they seem to drop large dandelion-like seeds when the wind blows. His face was full of wrinkles, and his pale silver eyes were kind. The body is stooped and looks very old. She is wearing a long yellow dress made of reed leaves, and the cut is very much in line with the style of an old lady. Overall, she looks like a neighbor's grandmother. Father God, is it you? The other party's tone was a bit trembling, wanting to recognize each other, but being afraid. When Lear saw this scene, his hanging heart suddenly relaxed. It's me, I'm back. Granny Greengrass, level 8, potential, 3 stars, magic, 2200, racial talent, Enlightenment, can give plants spirituality and can communicate with spiritual plants, skill, rooting and germination, 2 stars, allows plants to quickly take root and sprout, resurrection wind, 2 stars, can revive decaying plants, magic hand, 2 stars, has a chance to promote low-level magic plants to high-level magic plants. Evaluation, a unique life created by the god of swamp with the power of the god of creation. Granny Greengrass's attributes are also very strange, all related to cultivating plants. None of them are useless, and unlike the Vine Fairy, which is only effective on starry sky vines, Granny Greengrass's skills are common to all plants, especially the magic hand. One allows plants to gain spirituality, and the other can improve low-quality magic plants. These 2 skills are invincible. Granny Greengrass felt the intimacy coming from her soul, and she burst into tears and walked towards him with choked sobs. Father God, we have been waiting for you for hundreds of thousands of years. Generation after generation, this process is too long. After the Vine Fairy saw Granny Greengrass, she also came forward in a cordial manner. Fu Jixin shouted subconsciously. Old lady. Granny Greengrass looked subconsciously and cried even more fiercely when she saw the Vine Fairy. Have you found the little fairy? Without any doubt in his heart, he knelt down directly on the ground and saluted with the most humble gesture. Father God. At this moment, the intelligence system in my mind quietly displays new information. You found the unique life of the swamp. Granny Greengrass gathered 2 unique lives in the swamp, and obtained an additional piece of information. When the authority of the swamp appears, bringing the Vine Fairy and Granny Greengrass will be of great benefit in controlling the authority. Lear couldn't help but feel very good. How many companions do you still have? Let them all come out. Let's go back to Welu City now. This is our new home. City of Dew. This name made Granny Greengrass tremble, and her tears became more intense. Great Father God, always thinking about the recovery swamp. Father God, including me, we have a total of 9 people. 0.3 star intelligence, only 9 people were obtained, which also shows the preciousness of Greengrass Granny. Lear was in a good mood. Let's go home. These production units are not inferior to powerful combat units for farming and territory development. They are the foundation for the development and rise of the territory. Chapter 85, Territory Attacked, Demigod Creation Plague Flies, 5,200 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 85, Territory Attacked, Demigod Creation Disease Fly, 5,200 words. Soon, all the Greengrass grannies came out from among the reeds, and all 9 of them were very similar in appearance. The long reed hair growing on the head is also quite eye-catching. After several people saluted Lear with tears in their eyes, they looked at the Vine Fairy lovingly, doting on these little guys flying around them. The joy in my heart almost overflowed from my chest. They finally found an organization. The great Father God has awakened, and the swamp tribe will surely regain its former glory, praised the swamp. After Lear made sure that the grannies of green grass had nothing to carry, he set off directly back to the territory without waiting any longer, but the journey home was much more relaxing than when we came. The goal has been achieved, the next step is how to digest the harvest and let these unique lives contribute to the city of Welu. Lear did not return from the original route, but deviated slightly and led his army to search an area he had never set foot on before. The results were obvious. When we returned to the territory at night, we captured more than 200 wild monster corpses. As Welu's city becomes more and more powerful, the scope of its activities is also rapidly increasing. The wild monsters near the territory have been greatly reduced, and it is foreseeable that in the near future, there will be only one voice in the entire swamp. It will not be easy to hunt as easily as today. If we leave the swamp and go to the wilderness, the round trip may take 3 to 5 days. This is something that must be faced as territory expands. The most comfortable thing is to steadily develop the farm. When the number of three-tailed pigs raised increases, there will be no need to work so hard. As soon as he returned to the territory, Bane, the chief political officer, jogged up to meet him. "Good night, my lord." Lear nodded and said solemnly. "Is Haggis awake?" "My lord, you are still sleeping. It is expected that the transformation will not be completed until the early morning." The tone was somewhat emotional and happy. Once it wakes up, Welu's city will have a powerful fighting force. Under the leadership of adults, the territory changes every day, which is really amazing. Lear nodded slightly and ignored the topic. He stretched out his hand to signal to Granny Greengrass beside him, gave a brief introduction, and then said, "Place them in place and let Granny Greengrass go see the pitcher plants, colorful moss and fishtail plants tomorrow. In the future, these plants in the territory can be managed by them. Nepenthes and colorful moss are both 1-star, and fishtail plants are just ordinary plants. If the quality can be improved, it will be a great thing for the territory." He was full of expectations for the unique life in this swamp. Bane only realized after hearing the introduction that these were the legendary green grass grannies who managed the magic garden for the swamp god. The excitement and joy were palpable. "You guys please come with me." Grandma Greengrass has appeared in many legends in the swamp, and almost all the swamp beings with inheritance have heard of their name. He immediately took a few people down with great interest. Seeing this, Lear let the army disperse to rest, and he took the bubble beast that contained the corpse to Haggith, who was still transforming. 5 teams of wetland lizard warriors are closely guarding the surrounding area to prevent outsiders from disturbing them. The blood essence placed next to him in the morning only had some residue left. The auras on Haggis and the Velociraptor lizard have gradually stabilized and no longer fluctuate so strongly. It seems that the corpses in their hands are of no use for the time being. Their transformation has entered the second half of the process, and it is not just more flesh and blood that can have the effect. But just in case, hundreds of corpses were left behind, and the rest were used by Bubblemon to feed the flesh slaughterer. As more and more flesh and blood are devoured, the time for the divine life to awaken is gradually approaching. The night became darker and darker, and the air gradually became quieter. No more hustle and bustle during the day. The sky was covered by heavy dark clouds, the moon did not shine, and everything was dark. Lear did not go to rest, but waited silently by Haggis' side. He could feel that the other party's aura had begun to revive, as if a dragon egg was about to hatch. Time flies. Early morning, late at night, a ray of moonlight penetrated through the gap in the clouds in the sky and fell on the swamp. "Let everything around be covered with silver gauze." Ah! Suddenly, a shrill scream woke up Welu's city. The sleeping crowd suddenly opened their eyes, sat up subconsciously, and turned their heads to look around. What sound? Immediately afterwards, a second roar sounded. Enemy attack! Everyone's scalp tightened immediately, their sleepiness disappeared instantly, and they stood up suddenly and looked outside the territory. The wetland lizard warrior was the first to react, showing a ferocious murderous intent and rushing directly in the direction of the sound. Lear's heart also jumped at this moment, and he stood up suddenly and strode forward. The 2-headed ogre chieftainite happened to be on the way. "Owner," Lear's tone was serious. "You immediately organize the army to defend, don't mess up," he said and looked at Bane, who was running in a hurry. "You lead all the residents into City Hall. Let the Vine Fairy blend into the City Hall, seal the space, and prevent enemies from entering. After a series of baptisms of blood and fire, Lear is no longer what he used to be, giving orders decisively and calmly. Seeing the backbone like this, the restlessness in the hearts of the two heroes was instantly calmed down, and Bane immediately went down to organize people and evacuate the residents. The two-headed ogre chieftain turned around and gathered the wetland lizard warriors who were rushing in. In this short time, the roar of fighting in front became more and more intense. Lear brought the wetland lizard warriors who had gathered around him to the south of the territory. At this moment, countless monsters are swarming in the grass area on the edge. Those monsters are about 1.5 meters long, and the 4 pairs of wings behind them are frantically flapping, raising waves of air, but because of their weight, they can only fly at a low altitude of more than 1 meter. The body is the body of a fly, and the head is also like a fly, but the mouth is full of sharp fangs. There are 4 pale human arms on the body, the scorpion-like hooks are bent towards the ground under the abdomen, and the hideous tail stinger reflects the dark light. The momentum is evil and weird, like a dark monster born from a pile of corpses. There are dense thumb-sized flies around it. It looks weird and terrifying, making people's scalps numb. There are so many of them, and there are more than 1,000 at a glance, and there is no telling how many are hidden behind the bushes. Several alert wetland lizardmen in front were directly overwhelmed by the opponent. They are coming fiercely. Plague flies, level 6, potential, 2 stars, racial talent, spreading plague, carrying deadly bacteria on the body. After attacking the enemy can be corroded by the plague. Skills, death bite, 1 star, the teeth are sharp, gnawing the enemy can tear flesh and bones. Armor-piercing stinger, 2 stars, the tail sting is very sharp and can easily penetrate the enemies. Armor defense, evaluation, the evil demigod the Lord of Stench and Flies cultivated a type of soldier, cruel and tyrannical. Lear's face became extremely solemn. The plague fly is that demigod? The intelligence refreshed this time shows the location of the other party's believers, and he has included them in the elimination list. But he didn't expect that the other party would come to him so quickly. Line up, form a formation. That there were 6 squadrons of wetland lizardmen gathered. These fearless warriors formed an unshakable line of defense at the edge of the territory. Amber eyes stared at these monsters coldly. Roar. A terrifying scream suddenly came from the bushes behind the plague fly. The wetland lizardman warrior only felt in his mind that a dark monster crawled out of the abyss, covered with festering flesh and surrounded by countless disgusting flies, staring coldly. The next moment, the other party seemed to tear through the space. They could even smell the disgusting rotten smell on the other party. For a moment, the momentum suddenly dropped, and the formation began to shake. Lear sensed something was wrong and his eyes turned cold. A demigod, you want to suppress my army? The divine power in his body emits a faint blue light, and endless divine power surges out instantly, forcibly dispelling the pressure. The army suddenly recovered, and then their eyes became colder and more brutal. Anger is accumulating. Damn bastard. Roar. Realizing that the pressure of the demigod is ineffective, a soul-stirring scream came from behind the plague fly again. It was like a charge horn. The dense plague flies buzzed and flapped their wings fiercely, and their hideous bodies attacked fiercely. Looking around, it was dark, like a huge wave hitting a reef. Once the front line cannot be resisted, the entire territory will be flattened in an instant. There is death and no life. Kill. That the two-headed ogre chieftain that stood in the front, holding his giant mace tightly and roaring wildly. The blue veins on his neck were bulging at this moment. At the moment when the plague flies approached, the muscles on his body were like springs compressed to the extreme, and they exploded instantly. Whoosh, the huge mace swung, making the air explode. It hit the enemy in front hard. Crack bang. That the bones broke directly, and the flesh and blood exploded. The 3 plague flies in front were like watermelons hit by baseballs, with green blood and mucus scattered all over the ground. They were blown up alive. Buzz buzz buzz. That the 2 sides merged instantly, a fight of blood and flesh. The wetland lizardman warriors holding steel knives rushed to the front line. The level 7 level and fully armed central armor gave them enough advantages. A wetland lizardman warrior swung the steel knife and chopped it down fiercely. The plague fly in front flapped its wings fiercely to avoid the attack, but the wetland lizardman warrior rushed up with a grin and hit the opponent. The opponent's body trembled, and the flight slowed down. At this moment, the claws swung. Puff. It penetrated the flesh and blood, deep into the chest, then it twisted it hard inside. Green mucus splashed wildly. the plague fly felt pain and screamed like glass scratching an iron door. It bit the arm of the Wetland Lizardman fiercely, and the terrifying force directly made tiny teeth marks appear on the armor. It pierced directly. The Wetland Lizardman warrior roared and drew his sword to chop horizontally. Puff. Directly cut off its head. Let the green mucus splash all over, but it didn't hesitate for a second and pounced on the second one. A plague fly pounced on a Wetland Lizardman in the chaos, and its tail sting. Puff pierced fiercely. The Wetland Lizardman who was not wearing armor was immediately torn in the abdomen, but after being injured, his brutal nature was aroused. In a rage, he held the head of the plague fly with one hand and swung the other hand violently. The sharp claws directly pierced through the head. After struggling for a few times, the monster suddenly stiffened. He killed the opponent forcefully, but the blood was still flowing out of the wound in his abdomen. Feeling that his condition was rapidly declining, the Wetland Lizardman felt a little cold in his heart. With this kind of injury, he would die on the battlefield, but in a blink of an eye, he became even crazier. Even if he died, he would drag a few people into hell with him. He roared and rushed forward, but just as he was fighting with the next plague fly, he suddenly felt a warm energy surge into his body. The wound on his abdomen was healing at an exaggerated speed. At the same time, the poison attached to the plague fly was also forcibly suppressed. What is this? In doubt, he burst out with a stronger force, exchanged his life for his life, and killed the enemy in front of him again, then turned his head and took a look. Through the gaps in the crowd, a towering figure with extraordinary heroic spirit and deep eyes like the starry sky was watching the battlefield. His eyes were full of encouragement and appreciation. Overlord. He knows healing. The newly joined Wetland Lizardman was shocked. He had never been treated like this when he was wandering and fighting in the wilderness in the past. Feeling his strength recovering quickly, he turned around and roared. This time was even crazier than before, because there was no one behind him anymore. He also had someone to back him up. Although Lear did not participate in the frontline battle, his role was irreplaceable. Once the front line was damaged, he would cast the swamp gift as soon as possible. After the level was upgraded, his magic power had soared to 1200 points, and he could cast it 40 times continuously, and after level 7, the magic power recovery speed was also improved, and it could recover more than 300 points per minute, enough for him to cast the swamp gift 10 times. In this way, he single-handedly nursed back a large number of severely injured or even dying Wetland Lizardmen. He forcibly supported the entire front line. At the same time, the bubble beasts and swamp banshees in the rear gathered and rushed over. The bubble beasts took action first, blowing bubbles one by one, compressing the air crazily to form bubble bombs. Then they drew a long arc in the air and fell down. Bang! It suddenly exploded in the center of the enemy. The air wave was fierce, lifting a large piece of soil. The plague flies had strong vitality, and the bubbles could not directly kill them. However, under the interference of the explosion, their formation and offensive rhythm were interrupted, allowing the Wetland Lizardman warriors to deal with it more calmly. The swamp banshee beside him began to hum softly. The powerful temptation confused the plague flies on the battlefield for a moment, but they broke free in a breath and started a crazy fight again. They were shrouded by the will of the demigods and had extremely high resistance to the singing of the swamp banshees. The level 7 swamp banshee couldn't break through the demigod's barrier. Seeing this, Lear immediately said, Mar, aim at the area where the battle is fierce, concentrate your magic power, and let them fall into illusions at the critical moment. Upon hearing this, the swamp banshee immediately changed her fighting style. Once she found that the plague flies were attacking fiercely in certain areas, she immediately hummed. After narrowing the range, the opponent's sluggishness extended to 2 breaths. Although it was also short, it was enough for the Wetland Lizardman to complete the reversal. On the battlefield, a pause of a blink of an eye can be fatal. At this moment, the anger, unwillingness, cruelty, madness and other emotions attached to the battle also surged towards the swamp banshee like a tide. Although it was not as clear and easy to digest as when performing a drama, it was still full of them because of the large number. The breath on her body was rising rapidly. After the battle entered a white-hot stage, the number of plague flies that could not be estimated at all was still pouring out densely from the bushes behind. Too many. The human wave tactics were used to the extreme at this moment. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, a more terrifying sound of flapping wings sounded in the sky. The fiercely attacking plague flies looked up and saw an endless black frenzy swarming in the sky. the fist-sized muddy wasps with ferocious stingers finally arrived at the battlefield. More than 60,000 of them formed a terrible insect tide. In mid-air, they were like arrows, stabbing madly, swish swish swish. Puff. Flying at high speed. The 10-centimeter-long stinger like a steel needle pierced into the body of the plague fly. These monsters, which also have stingers, can secrete highly toxic substances and carry germs, do not have the characteristics of wetland lizardmen being immune to pain. The highly toxic substances pierced into the body, and the pain deep into the soul exploded, as if someone was using a blender to twist the flesh and blood in the body. The pain made the plague flies scream wildly, swinging their stingers violently, and biting with their mouths. They wanted to launch a counterattack. Although the swamp wasps were high in level, they were thin in health and small in size. Once attacked, they would die instantly. The number of casualties increased instantly. However, due to the large number, these casualties could not affect the scale of the insect tide at all. The plague flies had no suitable means to deal with them. Facing these high-speed flying lives, they could only rage helplessly. The most fatal thing was that the wetland lizardmen warriors in front of them would not let them deal with the swamp wasps. They launched a more ferocious attack. The plague flies were defeated step by step, under the joint efforts of the swamp wasp, the wetland lizardman, the bubble beast, and the swamp banshee. These dark soldiers cultivated by the demigods who suddenly launched an attack were quickly cleared. The battlefield was like a high-speed meat grinder, killing all the opponents. These insects were really cruel and crazy. Even if they were completely defeated in the end, they still charged forward. There was no fear in their eyes. The number of plague flies dropped rapidly to less than 100. Just when Lear was about to completely annihilate the opponent, a third scream came from behind him. Insects, the immortal will of my God is not something you can disobey. You all deserve to die. The dull and crazy voice penetrated into my mind. I couldn't understand the other party's language, but I could directly understand its meaning. Puff. The 4 or 5 wetland lizardmen near the bushes in front were suddenly hit by a huge force, like a stone hit by a stick. The body flew out 20 or 30 meters and fell heavily to the ground. Bang! A large piece of mud and flesh splashed. Looking carefully, blood was flowing from all 7 orifices, and breathing suddenly stopped. Lear turned his head to look. A terrifying monster with a height of more than 3.5 meters, flapping its wings like a fly frantically, and making itself 20 centimeters above the ground appeared in front of him. The body was walking upright, but twisted and weird, with large pieces of rotten flesh on the body, covered with flies. 4 pale arms tightly grasped a giant double-edged battle axe, and the body was burning with light green energy. The head was the head of a fly, and the scarlet compound eyes were crazy and cruel. General of plague flies, level 12, potential 3 stars, racial talent Chi and blood, 3500. Hero talent, carrion frenzy, after being injured, can quickly devour carrion to recover. Skill, heavy strike kill, 3 stars, burst all power to directly execute the enemy, causing 3 times damage to enemies smaller than itself. My God's will, 3 stars, can summon the will of the demigods to descend, greatly improving combat effectiveness. Star Crusher, 3 stars, slashes out a 20-meter long blade of blood and chi, crushing all enemies. Evaluation, a powerful hero cultivated by the Lord of Fowl and Flies. This is a level 12 hero in full bloom, without any suppression, with 3 3-star skills. That's not all, the opponent also wears a black magic ring shining with majestic energy on his head. Ring of the Dead, level 2 stars. Features: 1. A special magic ring that seals 10,000 souls. When attacking, it can create a soul-piercing scream to the enemy. 2. The power of annihilation. The attack comes with the power of annihilation, which can make the enemy's flesh and blood fester directly. Not only is his own ability fierce, but there are also magic equipment. Lear's eyes became extremely solemn. This enemy is too strong. At this moment, the 2-headed ogre chieftain had stared fiercely at the fierce plague fly general with 2 heads. His eyes were filled with fierce fighting spirit. His transformation had reached a critical moment. If he could kill this fierce enemy, he would be able to take that crucial step, for the city of Wei Lu, for the master, for revenge. Kill. Chapter 86. After the war, the eyeball of Demigod, 5,800 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The two-headed ogre chieftain was 3 meters tall, and his figure was like a little giant. When facing the general of the plague flies, he was still suppressed, but he rushed forward without fear. The general of the plague flies flapped his wings, and the scarlet fly compound eyes suddenly exuded a cold murderous intent. He rushed over with a double-edged long-handled battle axe in his hand. The two sides approached in an instant. The two-headed ogre chieftain suddenly jumped up and swung the giant mace in his hand from a high position, whooshed at the air, whistled and exploded. The long-handled double-edged battle axe of the general of the plague flies slashed horizontally, clang. Sparks flew everywhere, and the sound of metal and stone clashing sounded around. The blood and chi of both sides collided, splashing large pieces of light green and blood-colored flame-like energy, which scattered all over the sky. It was like the sparks of iron flowers exploding instantly. At this moment, the two-headed ogre chieftain felt countless crazy screams in his mind. It was like the painful curses and screams of thousands of people who were tortured. At the same time, the force of the rebound in his hand almost made his mace slip out of his hand. Attacking from a high position is more advantageous, but at this moment, it was easily blocked by the opponent. His face became extremely ugly, but in an instant, he suppressed all his restlessness, roared, and launched a more fierce attack. The eyes of the plague fly general in front of him turned cold, and he swung his weapon to hit him hard. The power of the two-headed ogre chief is overbearing, but the plague fly general is stronger, and every time the opponent attacks, it will be accompanied by a soul-sounding screaming impact. He couldn't help but become dazed, and his face became more and more ugly. The 11th level hero who has not yet completed the transformation is facing a fully armed top hero. At this moment, the gap between the two sides is extremely wide. The annihilation power attached to the 2-star magic equipment, the Ring of the Dead, is even more unbearable for the two-headed ogre chief. Once injured, the wound will quickly fester, and no matter how powerful the recovery ability is, it will be useless. As the wounds increased, the flies crawling on the opponent's rotten flesh also smelled the smell and flapped their wings to fly over. They landed on the wounds and began to gnaw. The germs eroded the body like venom. In the fierce battle, the breath of the two-headed ogre chieftain quickly declined. In just 7 or 8 minutes, he felt exhausted and the collision became heavier. The weapon in his hand was as heavy as a mountain and he could hardly lift it. At some point, blood had seeped out of his nose, eyes, ears, and mouth. Those small flies have the effect of inhibiting treatment. The treatment effect of Lear in the back dropped to the freezing point and could not be restored. He was going to die. This thought suddenly emerged. The two-headed ogre chieftain's eyes were blurred by blood and full of unwillingness. How could he die here? How could he? He had not seen the rise of the City of Wisdom, and had not returned to the Broken Star Plane to kill the rebels who murdered his father and take back his throne. How could he fall here? Ah! A hysterical roar came from his throat. The smaller secondary head on his shoulder, which had been closing its eyes, opened its eyes at this moment. The dark and ferocious eyes stared at General Plague Fly. The two-headed ogre chieftain only felt as if his body was re-infused with energy. The breath surged at a rapid speed. Boom! The blood and chi burned up. Like an erupting volcano, it set off a 1,000-foot wave of flames. Kill! He roared and rushed directly to kill. At this moment, General Plague Fly's scarlet compound eyes also showed a serious look. Reptile, you are qualified to have your head collected by me. The cold voice drilled into his mind. The opponent's momentum suddenly changed, the muscles of his body swelled violently, and the 4 pale arms held the double-edged battle axe tightly and raised it above his head. With a sharp scream, he violently slashed down. The air was rippling. Heavy strike, 3 stars, explodes all strength to execute the enemy directly, causing 3 times the damage to enemies smaller than itself. The two-headed ogre chief also raised the mace behind him and swung it with a roar. At this moment, he exploded with unprecedented strength. The weapons of both sides collided instantly. Crack! Bang! The mace was directly cut off. Under the unbelievable gaze of the two-headed ogre chief, the long-handled double-edged battle axe was still powerful and chopped him hard. Puff! From the chest to the abdomen, a terrible knife mark was drawn. The ribs were broken and the internal organs of the abdomen poured out directly. At this moment, outsiders can clearly see that there is a gap between heroes. The Plague Fly General, who was luxuriously equipped and at the peak of strength, crushed the two-headed ogre chief who had not yet completed his transformation. In his last remaining light, he only saw the Plague Fly General flapping his wings and slowly approaching. his figure as majestic as a mountain. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth, and his 5 fingers suddenly clenched. In extreme unwillingness, he fell to the ground unconscious. Seeing this, the plague fly general flapped his wings and stepped forward, wanting to directly execute the 2-headed ogre chieftain, but at this moment, bang! Several bubbles fell down suddenly and exploded beside him, raised a fierce air wave. Dust splashed everywhere, blocking his vision. When he came to his senses, he found that the 2-headed ogre had been taken away by the bubbles. Looking carefully, the only remaining plague flies around had been slaughtered when he just fought. The field was covered with corpses and flesh, and the green mucus mixed with scarlet blood was particularly dazzling. The stench of blood and the strange smell of mucus kept drilling into the nose, making people sick. The bubbles did not cause any damage to the plague fly general. The gap between the level 8 bubble beast and the level 12 hero is too big. The swamp banshee in the back kept singing, but she could not make the opponent lose consciousness for even a moment. When the 2 of them fought just now, the high-attack assassins such as the swamp wasp rushed to the burning light green energy of the opponent, and their souls were ignited, and their life breath was directly extinguished. Like a moth to a flame, a series of means failed, and Lear now intuitively realized the cruelty of high-end combat power. Before, he was able to hunt the mosquito queen of the same level, with intelligence as support, and he made a 3-star alchemy potion to restrain the opponent. Now he suddenly faced this level of cruel enemy, and the surging pressure came to his face. The opponent alone can make the entire army feel difficult. If you want to kill the opponent, you can only use the army. Lear's eyes became cold. All troops, listen to my orders. It takes 1,000 days to raise an army, but only 1 day to use it. He has accumulated an army for so long just to deal with the arrival of this day. Kill. The deep voice was full of unquestionable determination. The army pressed forward without any hesitation. He stared at General Plague Fly. Death. That's nothing. The glory of a soldier is to fall on the way of charging. But at this moment, boom! A huge and majestic breath came from behind. It was like a giant dragon breaking out of its shell. General Plague Fly suddenly raised his head and looked in that direction. For the first time, fear and solemnity appeared in his eyes. Danger, deadly danger. It was like someone had put the tip of a knife against his neck. Deadly and brutal. Roar! A low and suppressed roar resounded through the world. Bang! 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 The earth gradually trembled, and Learman turned his head and saw a figure riding a beast in front of him. Hags. Wake up! This majestic lizardman hero, whose height has grown to 2.8 meters, has taken off his armor because it no longer fits him. His body is covered with palm-sized scales that emit a metallic luster. His muscles are bulging high, and he is filled with an indescribable sense of power, as if he can knock down a city wall with one punch. His eyes are fierce and his momentum is like a rainbow. Under his seat is a swift and fierce lizard with a shoulder height of 3 meters. His forelimbs are short, but his claws are sharper than a blade. His hind limbs are thick and powerful, and he can easily crush boulders while running. The scales on his body are small, but they also reflect a metallic luster, and his defense is comparable to heavy armor. The tail makes a whirring and sharp sound when it swings like a steel whip, and it can directly explode a person when it hits him. His mouth is slightly open, and there are sharp teeth like saw teeth inside that can easily tear steel. The most important thing is that the auras of the 2 are completely compatible, and they are indistinguishable from each other. Cold-blooded cavalry, Hags. The job transfer is successful. Lear opened the panel and took a look. The opponent's level 12 made him hold his breath. After he was promoted, his level soared to level 12. It was already the same level as the evil hero cultivated by the Demigod. He stared at the plague fly general with a low voice. Hags, execute him. That he could kill the plague fly general with human lives, but this would be an unbearable loss for the city of Wei Lu. Soldier against soldier, general against general. Hagis's amber eyes suddenly turned cold. While he was transforming and sleeping, this bastard dared to attack the territory and kill his companions. Unforgivable, damn it. This Wetland Lizardman hero who had just completed his transformation rushed forward. The swift lizard stomped on the ground, making a rumbling vibration. The speed was like lightning, leaving a residual image. He held the steel knife tightly in his hand, held down the swift lizard with one hand to stabilize his body, and his eyes were full of tyranny and cruelty. The crowd subconsciously made way, allowing Hags to pass through. General Plague Fly clenched the long-handled double-edged battle axe in his hand, and endless light green energy poured into it. He swung it fiercely, a terrifying half-moon-shaped sharp blade energy slashed fiercely through the void, destroy everything. Caught off guard, Hags suddenly turned sideways, and a piece of flesh and bone was directly torn off his shoulder, blood burst, half of his shoulder was gone, which looked extremely creepy. The army in the rear held their breath, but the next moment, to everyone's surprise, the injured enemy recovered rapidly, visible to the naked eye, and recovered in a few blinks, hero's talent regeneration. In this short moment, Hags had rushed to General Plague Fly, the steel knife swung down, clang. Directly hit the long-handled double-edged battle axe, a large piece of sparks exploded, the two sides instantly fought in a group, the terrifying blood and chi gushed out, more than 10 times more fierce than the previous battle. However, this time, the Plague Fly General no longer had an overwhelming advantage. Instead, Hags pressed the opponent again and again. No matter how the Plague Fly General exploded, he was forcibly suppressed. The swift and fierce lizard under the seat moved flexibly and had strong combat power, the bite of the mouth, the swing of the tail like a steel whip, and the sharp claws of the forelimbs could cause great damage to the Plague Fly General. It dared not ignore it at all, coupled with the almost abnormal regeneration ability that can recover in a few breaths after being injured. It burst out with extremely terrifying combat power. The Wetland Lizardmen who were watching the battle around were swaying in their thoughts and their eyes were filled with shock. Lear also watched the battle on the field intently. Is this the two-way enhancement of combat effectiveness after promotion to 3-star potential and transfer to cold-blooded cavalry? Fierce. So fierce. The Plaguefly General sensed the horror of Hagath and began to go crazy, but no matter how fierce the offensive was, it was forcibly suppressed. The steel knife in his hand became extremely tough and sharp under the envelope of chi and blood. He hit the opponent hard with a long-handled double-edged axe that was more than 3 meters long, but made the opponent retreat frequently. Thinking back to the fact that the ferocious two-headed ogre chief was easily suppressed by General Plague Fly, we can see the difference in strength. To what extent has this Wetland Lizard hero improved? General Plague Fly was slashed on the body by Haggis, and his flesh and blood exploded again. At this moment, his body is covered with dense scars. On the other hand, Haggis was unscathed. General Blight Fly took a few steps back, grabbed the flesh and blood of the Blight Fly on the ground, melted it instantly, and his injuries began to recover rapidly. Upon noticing this, Haggis sneered and rushed forward without giving him a second chance to recover. Although his hero talent is strong, it takes time. Haggis's talent can directly consume energy in the body to recover from injuries. The two are not the same concept. Soon, the Plague Fly General was cornered. His body was covered in scars and he couldn't stop recovering, and he was already surrounded by the army of Welu City. Once he weakens, he will be swarmed and killed. He smelled death. Roared. An indescribable terrifying power suddenly surged out of his body. At this moment, the sky seemed to darken. Lear's eyes narrowed. Lord of Stink and Flies. The demigod set his sights on the battlefield. My lord, please give me strength. After the disease fly general roared, the supreme will suddenly shattered, and then all poured into his body. The aura on the opponent's body soared at a speed visible to the naked eye. He exploded violently and charged towards Haggis, but at this moment, Haggis tightened his grip on the sword in his hand, and the power from his body poured into it crazily. Even the fierce lizard, which was sitting down, had all its power gushing out at this moment. Ah! A mad roar erupted from his throat. The velociraptor lizard galloped forward and swung its sword directly at General Disease Fly. The opponent raised the long-handled battle axe in his hand and wanted to give it a head-on blow, but the next moment, poof, the long-handled battle axe broke directly, and the steel knife was chopped off from the chest with an unstoppable momentum. Infinite power bursts out diagonally downward from the chest, cut off half of the body. The momentum that had risen to the top was trampled into the mud at this moment. The terrifying pain made General Plague Fly stiffen for a moment, and the Haggis steel knife was drawn out. The moment the two sides passed each other, he turned around sharply and slashed his sword from behind. Returned to the saber. Poof, half of his head was blown away, brains mixed with green mucus spattered freely. Plop, the huge corpse fell directly to the ground with an unbelievable expression, hitting the ground hard and no longer alive. General Disease Fly, die. The wool lingering on him suddenly condensed again, a twisted and blurry figure covered with flies formed in the void. After taking a deep look at Lear, the blurry shadow dissipated into nothingness, the place suddenly fell into silence. Lear turned around and looked around. There were corpses everywhere. August's figure stood among them, looking particularly eye-catching. At this point, this sudden bloody attack came to an end. You commanded the army to defeat and annihilate the attack of the followers of the demigods, Stinky and the Lord of Flies. You protected your territory and obtained an additional piece of information. The Lord of Stinky and the Flies gave the eyeballs that he had left behind after his transformation to the person in front of you. General Disease Fly can be obtained by digging out his right eye. Through the breath of the right eye, you can open to the plane where the Stench and the Lord of Flies are. The information that suddenly appeared in his mind made Lear a little more energetic. He looked at the corpse of General Plague Fly. Clean the battlefield and collect the bodies of our fallen soldiers. Other bodies were gathered together. After the surrounding armies began to get busy following the order, he walked towards the corpse of General Plague Fly. Pull out its right eye. The wetland lizard warrior beside him immediately took action and dug out his right eye, holding it in your hand. It is smooth and cold, like a red gem. Looking at it carefully, its attributes came to mind. Evil eye, level, 3 stars, characteristics, evil nature, installed in the body, will become extremely evil, but at the same time, the power can also be greatly increased. Rating. The eyeball left behind by a demigod's transformation. This is actually a 3-star level treasure. The characteristics are also very special. If you feel it carefully, you can find that there is indeed a unique power hidden in it. As long as you input energy, you can use that energy to open the plane leading to the Stench and the Lord of Flies. After calming down, he looked at the ring of the dead worn on the head of General Plague Fly. This 2-star magic treasure is now his trophy. Let the soldiers beside you take it off together. The moment Lear took it, he felt a bit of chill, which was the breath of death and the sorrow of countless souls inside. After weighing it, he handed it to Hags. This treasure is a reward for you. The Ring of the Dead is suitable for melee heroes. As a nurse, he does not need to rush to the front line to fight the enemy. Hags turned over and got off the swift lizard, knelt on one knee on the battlefield, and took it respectfully. Thank you for your gift, Lord. His tone was excited. Not only the gift of this weapon, but also the power of a hero was given to him twice. In the wilderness, strength is more important than life. This favor cannot be repaid with life. Lear nodded and said nothing more. Let people continue searching. However, no other treasures were found on the other party. Finally, the severed weapon of General Plague Fly was also collected, the 3-meter-long long-handled double-edged battle axe, perhaps because of the rough workmanship, is just an ordinary equipment. There were many potholes on it. Like a crude work of a small workshop, the metal was obviously of high quality, but the craftsmanship was not good. I will go back to build the blacksmith shop and see if I can go back to the furnace. The crowd hiding in the city hall in the back left the hall after hearing the news that the battle was over and the territory was safe. As far as the eye could see, there were corpses. They were a little trembling when they saw the tragic scene. They could not imagine how fierce the battle was just now. Once the army was overwhelmed, what awaited them would be an unprecedented disaster. Fortunately, the Lord led the army to stop the enemy, and won a great victory. Winning the foreign war and eliminating the enemy's threat is always the best way to unite people. After the fear, the residents' sense of belonging to the territory quietly increased. They began to take the initiative to help. Half an hour later, the losses and gains after the war were counted. First of all, the losses. The Wetland Lizardmen warriors who charged on the front lines suffered the most tragic losses. Even with the home advantage, with the support of Bubble Beast, Swamp Wasp, Swamp Banshee, and Lil's crazy treatment, 6 teams were still killed. The total force dropped to 550 people. In addition, the number of Swamp Wasp killed was about 5,000, all of whom were killed in the melee. The total number dropped to just over 50,000. It is worth mentioning that 3 barbarians who stayed in the territory were also killed. In addition, the 2-headed ogre chieftain was hit in the abdomen by the plague fly general and fell asleep with serious injuries. The spoils of war, a total of more than 2,400 level 6 plague fly corpses were collected. They were piled up densely to form a small hill. According to the number of enemies, only 6 teams were lost, which was already precious. The 2-star magic treasure carried by the plague fly general, the Ring of the Dead and the long-handled double-edged battle axe in his hand that was cut off were also collected. Finally, the 3-star Evil Eyeball. After hearing the report, Lear was silent for a long time, silently looking into the eyes of General Plague Flies. Demigod, right? Good, very good. A bit of coldness flashed in his eyes. This blood feud can only be repaid with blood. He closed his eyes and looked at Bane beside him. Have the bodies of the fallen soldiers been collected? They have all been found. Let these heroes be buried tomorrow morning. In the future, the number of troops on night alert will be increased to 2 squadrons and the range will be expanded to 5 kilometers. Yes, sir. After a busy period in the territory, it became quiet again, but tonight, most people have no intention of sleeping. After Lear let the army go down to rest, he looked at Hags standing beside the swift lizard. Open its attribute panel again. After the will of the demigod descended, General Plague Flies, whose attributes were greatly improved, was killed by him at the peak state. How powerful is this guy? With some expectation, he looked at it carefully. Hags, Hero Unit, Level, High Level Knight, Level 12, Potential, 3 stars, extra 30% strength increase, Health, 12,000. Hags, Wetland Lizardman Hero, Works-related attributes, free chapters. You are listening at novelfold.audio. Hags, Hero Unit, Level, High Knight, Level 12, Potential, 3 stars, Level Cap, Level 12, Strength increased by 30%, Racial talent, Amphibious life, with unique lungs, able to hold breath for a long time and take short breaths underwater. Hero talent, 1, Regeneration, the body with unique strength has the ability to regenerate. It can consume blood and chi to recover quickly after being injured, and can grow back even if the limbs are broken. 2. Body control, has absolute control over his own body, can mobilize the muscle strength of the whole body, and operate it in detail. Blood, 12,000 points. Profession, cold-blooded cavalry, rare, all attributes increased by 50%. Skill, scale armor, 3 stars, passive, scale armor has steel-like defense, and the damage received is reduced by 45%. Cruelty, 3 stars. When being injured or attacking, it will become extremely cruel, and all attributes will be increased by 45%. It is not afraid of pain and will fight the enemy to death. Crazy blood, 3 stars, after tasting the taste of blood, the size increases by 30% and the strength increases by 60%. Professional skills, life fusion, special, fusion with the life of the mount swift lizard, sharing life and strength, can transfer one's own injuries to the mount, and can also actively bear the injuries suffered by the mount. Mountain slash, special, concentrate all the strength of oneself and the mount, burst out a fatal attack, and can cut off everything in front. Cold blood, special, in an absolutely rational state, no matter what state, you can control your own reason and make the most accurate judgment. Hunter, special, for each enemy killed, you can get 1% of all attributes, up to 80%. Weakness detection, special, can clearly see the enemy's weaknesses. Equipment, Ring of the Dead, 2 stars. Evaluation, a cruel and powerful swamp life, his eyes are full of tyranny and killing. Chapter 87, Awakening of Divine Life, Powerful Spiritual Enlightenment, 4,700 words. You are listening at novelfold.audio. After reading the attributes of Haggis, Lear's heart trembled and his eyes became extremely hot. 3 3-star skills, 5 special professional skills, and blood up to 12,000 points. The second talent is body control. He has absolute control over his body and can mobilize the muscle strength of his whole body and perform micro-operations. Paired with the regeneration talent, it is mixed with a set of skills. Its combat effectiveness is off the charts. In comparison, General Disease Fly, who was also at level 12, only had 3,500 health points. Although the opponent is powerful, it is nothing compared to Haggis. No wonder he was favored by the will of the demigod and his head was beheaded. Fierce, too fierce. This is the top combat power after transferring to a cold-blooded cavalry, increasing one's own potential, activating the second talent, and improving several times. With this transformation, Agas has reached the peak of his 3-star potential and has become the most powerful combat force in Welu City. I have an extra trump card in my hand. Comfortable, but when he came to his senses, he felt a little worried about happiness. The cold-blooded cavalry is powerful, but it requires too many resources to cultivate. Hagatha's transformation was based on devouring hundreds of corpses. After thinking about it, he asked Haggis. Does an ordinary cold-blooded cavalry consume the same amount of money as you? That the level 12 hero shook his head. Master, about 100 corpses of ordinary cold-blooded cavalry can cultivate the power I control. It is stronger than others, so it requires more. As a heroic unit, his transformation is naturally unmatched by ordinary wetland lizardmen. Lear's mood calmed down a little. That's okay, otherwise I would be very busy, but compared to the combat effectiveness of the cold-blooded cavalry, it seems that this price is nothing. While the two were talking, Bane, the swamp hero, was approaching in a hurry. Master, all the corpses have been carried to the swamp tree people. Do they need to be eaten by the flesh and blood slaughterer immediately? Lear said solemnly. I'll be there right away. After seeing the combat effectiveness of General Plague Fly, he had a new understanding of the role of high-end combat effectiveness. The divine beings need to wake up as soon as possible. 2 months later, they will face an even more ferocious and powerful flying dragon, that is a terrifying life of level 16, 10 times and 100 times more powerful than General Disease Fly. Before, he had thought about using the army to surround and kill them, but after this battle, he had given up this idea. It is impossible for a flying dragon to fight a positional battle with them. Even if all the wetland lizardmen were transformed into cold-blooded cavalry, it would be too much. Arriving at the swamp tree man, more than 2,000 corpses were piled into several hills. The corpses of these level 6 soldiers contain extremely abundant flesh and blood energy. This harvest was more than the previous days of hunting combined. The headless flesh and blood slaughterer lay quietly on the ground, like an abyssal beast that had never awakened. As soon as I got a little closer, I immediately felt the pressure that penetrated into the soul of the other party. Lear waved his hand and asked the swamp tree men to carry the corpse and place it next to the flesh and blood slaughterer. The next moment the body landed on the ground, a faint scarlet energy emitted from the other party's body, covering it. The flesh and blood quickly dried up and shattered, turning into dregs all over the floor. If a corpse is thrown into it, it will be devoured in the blink of an eye. Like adding firewood to the stove, the aura emitted by the flesh and blood slaughterer gradually increased with the addition of nutrients, and the scarlet energy gradually deepened. Soon these more than 2,000 corpses were devoured. The aura of the flesh slayer surged to the critical point. Lear could clearly sense that the other party was just one step away from waking up. My heart also became excited. Turning around, he looked at the last corpse, General Plague Fly. He waved his hand and asked the wetland lizard man on the side to carry the body and throw it into the range covered by scarlet energy. Then he seemed to think of something, and with a thought, he took out the 3-star treasure he had just obtained. The eyeball of the evil god moved forward with an attitude of trying, but as soon as he got closer, a strong suction force came and sucked the eyeballs away. You can see the evil eyeballs falling into the ice and snow like red-hot steel balls, directly integrating into the body of the flesh and blood slaughterer. At this moment, a crisp sound of shattering glass resounded in my ears. The opponent's momentum suddenly increased, and an unspeakable evil aura covered the sky at this moment. The silver moonlight instantly became dim. It was like an extremely evil thing crawled out of the abyss, lying on the ground, without a head. A terrifying and strange life was stitched together, and its body trembled violently. He stood up slowly. At this moment, everyone around them felt creepy and their spines ran cold. He stared at the flesh and blood slaughterer with wide eyes. Under the gaze of the crowd, the evil thing slowly turned around and faced Lear. Lear could clearly feel the flesh slayer looking at him, even if it doesn't have a head. That invisible gaze was like the bloody sun hanging high in the sky, so hot and crazy. My lord, a hoarse, muffled thunder and somewhat ethereal unique sounds sounded from all around. Then, the half-Murloc god used his own divine power to glue the head, swallowing up a ray of divine life, and knelt down on one knee in the most humble manner. Salute to him. No head. Can you still speak? The wetland lizardmen around were sweating coldly. They really learned a lot today. Lear looked directly at this terrible life. The other party's neck was like the stem of a melon when it was picked, bare and covered with large blood scabs. It gave people a creepy visual impact. Such a life, not to mention its combat power, would cause great fear just by appearing in front of ordinary people. Do you have a name? Ladina, the real name I got when I was born. Lear nodded. He took a deep breath and opened its attribute panel, but he was a little dumb, because it still showed that there were no specific attributes in the transformation. You haven't completed the transformation yet. My lord, the eyeball you gave me contains another unique power. I need about a day to devour it. The flesh and blood slaughterer spoke fluently and normally, as if he was communicating with a normal person. Lear noticed this and asked directly. Have you obtained the inheritance of knowledge? Master. I have a lot of memories of half-fish people. Lear understood it. The other party is condensed from the flesh and blood of the half-fishmen, and with the addition of divine life, this kind of creature cannot be deduced by common sense. Does it still need flesh and blood? Ladina shook her bare neck. Digesting this eyeball is more important to me, she said with a bit of excitement in her voice. The breath of the demigod left in the eyeball is very unique. I may be able to use it to devour its power. Lear's eyes lit up. Is there such a thing? A demigod is a demigod after all. The other party was born from divinity, so it seems that it is not incomprehensible. At the moment, he didn't say much and waved his hand to let the other party digest it well. However, he also told him not to be greedy for merit. If he can devour the power of the Lord of Fowl and Flies, he should devour it. If he can't devour it, don't force it. It's not a good thing to provoke the other party to jump over the wall. The flesh and blood slaughterer immediately responded, and then lay down under the swamp tree man again, and fell asleep again, but this time, the other party will wake up. Lear was in a very good mood. Hags completed his transformation, and the divine life awakened. There were many good things today. In total, the Lord of Fowl and Flies gave him a wave of heads. If they could wake up earlier, the fierce general of plague flies would have to wait for slaughter. The momentum of the flesh and blood slaughterer was even stronger and more ferocious than Hags. After all, this was a divine life, and the starting point of its birth was already an end point that ordinary life could hardly reach in a lifetime. After the spoils were digested, this sudden attack was completely over. The loss was not small, but the harvest was also rich. It was a small profit. Lear did not stay for long and returned to the tent to rest. The next day, in the early morning, the sun revealed a ray of light, illuminating the clouds in the sky with colorful colors. The crowd gathered in front of the city hall early. At this time, in the open space, dozens of coffins woven with vines were quietly placed on the ground. The crowd was silent. The funeral of a hero. This is the second time, compared with the last time. The residents were more touched this time. They were looking at the corpses scattered all over the ground and the tragic scene of the fallen wetland lizard warriors. They even helped to collect many corpses. The heroes who sacrificed died for them. Only by participating in it personally can you more intuitively understand the heavy meaning of this sentence. These victims stood in the front line of the enemy's charge. Without these warriors, last night would have been a battle royale. Now they will die. Lear came to the crowd silently, glanced around, and his tone was calm and solemn. People of the city of Dew, you should all know that the enemy attacked the territory last night. Those dirty and disgusting monsters want to destroy our territory, occupy our food, and gnaw our flesh and blood. His tone gradually became higher. But our warriors worked together to annihilate them. We protected the territory and won the final victory. But at the same time, we also paid a heavy price. Do you see the coffins in front of you? Each one is a hero who sacrificed last night to protect the territory and each of us. Remember these heroes, they died for us. They will never be forgotten, and they will never be ignored. The Tomb of Heroes will be their home, and the Hall of Heroes will have their names and legends to sing praises. They are role models for all of us. There is no peace and tranquility, danger is everywhere, and it is our warriors who bear it all for us. All the glory belongs to them. They died great and glorious. Raise the spirit. The voice with strong motivation fell, and everyone felt a flame burning in their chest. The cohesion of the territory is soaring. The wetland lizard warrior immediately lifted the coffin of his companion and set off for the Tomb of Heroes. Lear carried the coffin and walked, while the swamp witches scattered white flowers in front of him, singing sad but hopeful songs. The atmosphere was solemn and dignified. The crowd, who had never experienced it before, finally felt why. People always said that sacrificing for the territory would be an honor. The Lord carried the coffin, all the residents sent him off. What an honor! After the burial, Lear buried the first shovel of soil with his own hands again, then the group mourned for 3 minutes. After all this was done, when the crowd dispersed, the emotions in their hearts lingered for a long time. The barbarians were even more emotional at this moment. Last time, they were just spectators, but this time was different. They also participated in this bloody battle last night. And 2 of their companions died on the front line of fighting the enemy. Today, what made them unable to calm down for a long time was that the 2 dead barbarians also received the same treatment and honor. Even if this is not the territory of the barbarians, even if they are not even residents of this territory, however, in the face of such glory, the fire in their chests still burned high. Sacrificing for this territory is not something unacceptable, but a great honor. When walking, the waist became particularly straight. When the crowd dispersed, the barbarian leader Azakan suddenly saw the Wetland Lizardman leader who arrived in the territory 2 days ago and expressed doubts about the city of Dew, stride forward, stop the other party, and speak in a low tone. Do you know now, that the beginning and end of the sentence made the Wetland Lizardman leader silent. After a long time, he held his chest and bowed to him. I apologize to you. I underestimated our territory, and even more underestimated the master's mind. That he fought near the barbarians last night and saw with his own eyes how 2 barbarians died in battle. Brave warriors deserve all respect, and today, the courtesy received by the sacrificed warriors far exceeded his imagination. He thought that it was a great fortune for the dead warriors to find a cemetery to bury. Unexpectedly, there would be such a grand and solemn funeral, and everyone's name would be engraved in the Hall of Valor in the future. That's the Hall of Valor. In order to commend and encourage their believers, the gods built the Hall of Valor to bury the heroic souls. After death, the devout believers will enter it and be resurrected. The human empire also imitated the gods to build the Hall of Valor to praise and engrave those heroes who have made great contributions, known to everyone. Entering the Hall of Valor is definitely the highest praise and honor for a warrior, no one can refuse. Azakan's face eased. The tone was a bit complicated. You are honored to be the Lord's subordinates. He patted the other party's shoulder and turned away. He was not a member of the city of Wei Lu. He still had his own territory, but after more than half a month of getting along, he had developed a strong sense of belonging to this territory. If it weren't for the sense of responsibility to strengthen the barbarians and build the first territory of the barbarians, he might have already offered his loyalty to the owner of this territory. Some people may be born leaders who make people follow them willingly. The hero's funeral ended, and the crowd began to get busy. Death is the most common thing in the wilderness and does not affect people's lives. Soon, Lear got another good news that there was new progress from the green grass granny. He immediately came to the area where the mutant pitcher plants were planted with great interest. At this moment, 9 old and frail figures with reed hair were busy in the field. What surprised him was that the pitcher plants that were planted just 2 days ago had grown to thigh height at this moment, and it was shaking its head in a rather magical way. The scene of dozens of thigh-high pitcher plants shaking their heads in the field was quite interesting. Seeing him approach, Grandma Green Grass immediately saluted. Father God. What are you doing? That the leading Grandma Green Grass said softly. Father God, these pitcher plants are very suitable for giving spirituality. We have given them some spirituality. Pointing to the spirit, Grandma Green Grass's talent, can give plants spirituality, and can communicate with plants with spirituality. Lear became interested. He opened the properties of the pitcher plant and took a look. It was found that its level was upgraded from 1 star to 2 stars, and it also had a new feature endowed with unique spirituality, possessing a certain amount of wisdom, can actively absorb nutrients to accelerate its own growth, and can accelerate the secretion of nectar. In just a moment, it became a 2-star magic plant. Lear was quite incredible, and what's interesting is that after the other party gains spirituality, it can actively absorb nutrients to grow, and can also accelerate the secretion of nectar. Before, it was passive absorption, but now it can be actively absorbed. No wonder it grows so fast. Looking carefully, I found that it has only been a short time, and these pitcher plants have grown a little bit. This spiritual talent is quite powerful. At this rate, it won't be long before the pitcher plants can produce nectar. Lear's thoughts became excited. In the future, these pitcher plants will surely reproduce seedlings when they grow up. At that time, if we continue to expand the scale of planting, won't we have a stable source of sugar? Sugar is a strategic resource in modern times. In this world without a sugar industry, it can almost be called a luxury. If a large-scale sugar industry can be built, it will be a continuous source of wealth, much more valuable than gold and silver mines. If the territory wants to develop in the future, it must trade with foreign countries. And the city of Wei Lu has nothing to show for foreign trade now. If it is done, it will be a specialty. A treasure that can be exchanged for a large number of resources. Looking at Granny Green Grass, full of praise. Well done. We will try to make the pitcher plants grow up as quickly as possible and reproduce them. We can start building our sugar industry from now on. Chapter 88 Demigod, are you also qualified to call yourself a god in front of me? 5,900 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lear was in a good mood as he watched the pitcher plants swaying in the mud. These lives were indeed created by the swamp god, and they suited his appetite very well. Cultivate these pitcher plants well and increase the scale as soon as possible, so that they can generate immeasurable value for us in the future. Grandma Greengrass felt his seriousness and her eyes became serious. As you wish, Father God. They are not good at fighting, but when it comes to cultivating plants, they believe they are not inferior to anyone. As Lear spoke, he took Grandma Greengrass to the fish farm again to show them the fishtail grass that feeds the dragon blood-red fish. After observing for a while, the leader of the Grandma's green grass stood up and said, Father God, these fishtail grasses can only be cultivated into one-star magic plants at most. If they are used as food to feed fish, there is little point in adding spirits. Lear was a little surprised. Whether to add spirits or not is another matter. It is enough to be able to cultivate them into one-star magic plants. Cultivate them as soon as possible. Dragon blood-red fish are more precious than pitcher plants, and these fishtail grasses are their food. After saying this, he sighed again. It's a pity that we haven't found a way to breed dragon blood-red fish yet. Grandma Greengrass said in a deep voice. Father God, I sense that these fish lack energy in their bodies, and the fishtail grass they are feeding now cannot meet their needs. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly. Lack of energy? Can it be compensated after the level of fishtail grass is raised? Of course it can be compensated. Grandma Greengrass was very sure. The smile on Lear's face immediately became more intense. Unexpectedly, the cause of the disease was discovered by Grandma Greengrass. After saying this, the leading Grandma Greengrass stepped forward and gently lifted up the fishtail grass that was growing in the mud and showed a little tip. She closed her eyes slightly. A faint green energy emanated from her body, covering the fishtail grass. In a moment, the magic power around her began to swarm into the fishtail grass in her hand as if attracted by a magnet. About 5 minutes later, she carefully inserted the fishtail grass back into the mud. Then an amazing scene appeared. The fishtail grass seemed to have pressed the accelerator and began to grow rapidly. The roots under the trunk grew densely like tentacles and covered the mud. The palm-sized fishtail grass grew 3 times in just 10 minutes. At this moment, the magic power that was pouring into it from all directions slowly stopped. Seeing this, Lear opened the attribute panel of the fishtail grass with curiosity. Fishtail grass. Magic plant, level, 1 star, features, contains rich magic energy. And can quickly replenish the nutrients needed for fish life after consumption. Evaluation, these water plants will be specially improved, and their vitality and growth rate have been greatly increased, and they can take root and grow on the surface of the mud. It's so easy to upgrade to a 1-star magic plant. Lear felt his eyes were opened. I thought that the cultivation of magic plants on the skill panel of Greengrass Granny would require a long time and careful care, and then selection, and finally become magic plants. I didn't expect that it would be transformed directly with magic power. Sure enough, the magic world cannot always be inferred by common sense, and this world itself does not conform to common sense. Compared to the previous fishtail grass, it has one more characteristic: it can quickly replenish the nutrients needed for fish life. It can be said to be a professional counterpart. Father, in the future, when feeding, just cut off the leaves above the roots of the fishtail grass. As long as their roots are not damaged, it will only take half a month to grow again. If you need to expand the scale, you can divide the fishtail grass and plant it. Lear nodded happily. I will tell you to transform more and increase the scale. The 9 green grass grannies immediately responded, and acted one by one. One picked up a fishtail grass and transformed it into a magic plant. At this speed, it won't take long to complete the transformation. When the time comes, divide the plant and plant it, the area can be doubled. Looking at the dragon blood red fish swimming in the water, he was very satisfied. These delicacies have finally found a way to reproduce. After breeding 300 to 500 acres, every dragon blood red fish can be eaten until tired. Like the pitcher plant that produces nectar, these dragon blood red fish are an inexhaustible gold mine, and in comparison, the value of each one is higher. If the transportation problem can be solved, it is also very good for trade. Call the staff of the fish pond to explain the relevant matters, and then let them communicate further with the green grass grandmother to strive to increase the scale as soon as possible. After the matter here was settled, Lear visited the two-headed ogre chief for a while. The battle with the plague fly general last night made this level 11 hero who had not completed the transformation fall into a deep sleep. There is no problem with the opponent's bravery in fighting to the death. The only thing is that the strength is a little worse. The swamp gift is no longer effective, and now he can only rely on his own luck like the swamp queen bee. Shaking his head, he turned away without hesitation and reassembled the army. The night attack by the followers of the Lord of Fowl and Flies made him feel a strong pressure. The enemy had already discovered and attacked the City of Wisdom, and this was only the first wave of attacks. No one could tell whether there would be a second or third attack in the future. He needed to control a stronger force as soon as possible. Fortunately, Hags and the Flesh Slaughterer had woken up, giving him more confidence, but if he could train 1 or 2 squadrons of cold-blooded cavalry, he would not be so passive in this battle. Strength is everything. The army gathered, 4 squadrons of Wetland Lizardmen warriors, 8 bubble beasts, and 3 swamp banshees. At the same time, all the muddy wasps were brought. The target of this time, 30 kilometers south, an area covered with long black grass, the worshipper of the evil demigod Lord of Stink and Flies. Since you dare to attack the city of Wei Lu, you must be prepared to bear the consequences. He never waits overnight for revenge. Lear's eyes were cold. After the army gathered, he thought about it and sent someone to call Bane's granddaughter, the one who made a 3-star alchemy potion and the only alchemist in the city of Wei Lu. Danya, seeing Lear, the 13 or 14-year-old girl was very shy. Good day, Lord. After a timid salute, she twisted the cloth bag in her hands with both hands and didn't dare to look at him. Lear stared at the little girl and said slowly, Donia, you should know that a group of brutal enemies attacked the territory last night. We sacrificed dozens of soldiers for this, and this hatred must be explained. Blood debt can only be repaid with blood. Donia's little face also became serious. She didn't care about being shy and handed over the cloth bag in her hand. Lord, this is the black-spotted bloodworm powder I made in the past few days. It's all here. Due to the number of black-spotted red bloodworms, I can't make too much at present. He hurriedly added. But I have begun to try to breed black-spotted red bloodworms. These worms grow very fast. I will get a large batch in the middle of next month. The reproduction speed of worms is not comparable to that of ordinary life. They lay thousands or tens of thousands of eggs at a time, which is not worse than fish, and the survival rate is much higher than that of fish. After Lear took it, he nodded in appreciation. Danya, you did a great job. If you need any resources, you can ask Bane directly, and try to stabilize the production of black-spotted bloodworm powder. The power of the 3-star alchemy potion has been tested on the 13th level Mosquito Queen, and with the cooperation of Bubble Beast, the effect can be greatly increased. It is right to prepare more means to deal with those evil god worshippers. The little girl's face flushed immediately after hearing this, and she nodded excitedly. To be recognized by Lear, for her, it was as glorious as a child who won the first place in the exam and went on stage to receive the award. After all the preparations were completed, the army set out directly. 30 kilometers is not close, but this area has been explored for the most part, and the marching speed is very fast. At noon, the Wetland Lizardmen in front sent a message. An area full of black long grass was found. Lear's eyes condensed, and his inner emotions immediately rose. Let the large army stay for a while. He took Hags and 2 teams of Wetland Lizardmen to sneak closer. After walking forward for about 10 minutes, passing through a sparse forest, the view suddenly opened up. There was a large open space in front of us, with no end in sight. The ground was covered with black, thin wild grass, covering the entire open space. Concentrating his mind, he could sense that this piece of grass exuded a unique evil smell. It was like corpses and flesh were spread on the ground, and the black grass was an evil thing that grew from sucking blood. The air exuded a pungent smell of fishy and sulfur mixed together, which made people sick. Looking around, the air was silent, with only a few rubbing sounds made by the breeze blowing through the grass and leaves. The sounds of insects and frogs seemed to be isolated. Hags seemed to have noticed something at this moment, staring at the center of the black grass. "Master, those bastards are here. I can sense the disgusting smell of those flies." Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked around, but found nothing. He looked down at the grass, thinking. The spirit escaped, mobilized the swamp godhood in the body to wrap itself with the power of the gods, then used the trunk to hide the body, and stepped on it quietly. The next moment, the scene in front of her eyes suddenly changed. The black grass was no longer there, and under her feet was a piece of land covered with blood and limbs. The strange and twisted hairs on it were wriggling in the air, much like the fluff growing on the feet of flies. In the central area, thousands of bodies knelt on the ground, forming a circle, facing the center in silence. What was shocking was that above the center of those bodies, a 3-meter-long space crack stood upright in the void, like a demon's eye. From the crack, plague flies kept crawling out. There were already thousands of them gathered below, and they were still increasing. The most important thing was that he also saw 3 plague fly generals. Lear took a deep breath and his eyes became cold. Fortunately, he took action today. If he was a step late, the enemy army would gather together, and tonight would definitely be a battle 10 times more brutal than last night. Even if the flesh slaughterer completes the transformation, it will have to pay an unbearable price. Step back. The scenery in front of him disappeared immediately. It was still the lush black grass. "Master." Haggis was a little confused. Lear didn't say much, and waved his hand to let the accompanying soldiers return immediately. Returning to the main force, he recovered. While thinking, he informed the army of the news inside, and finally looked at Haggis and said in a serious tone, "If an outsider enters that area, it will be sensed by it immediately. So, we don't have much chance." He used the power of the Godhead to block the other party's perception, but the army has hundreds of people, and he can't protect everyone. Once the battle begins, you need to deal with the 3 plague fly generals as soon as possible. Can you do it? Hags's tone was low, and his eyes were firm and unquestionable. "My lord, I will complete the task." The Lord gave him everything. If he can't do this task, how can he become the blade of the city of dew? How can he cut off all the thorns in front of the Lord? The lizard man will never disappoint. Lear nodded. His eyes became colder. "Bubble Beast, light the black-spotted bloodworm powder and use bubbles to accumulate smoke. Wetland Lizardmen, listen to the order. Once the explosion sounds, be ready and wait for the swamp wasps to attack, and charge together. Swamp banshees cooperate with the Wetland Lizardmen to attack. The low-flying swamp wasps do not need additional orders. They can launch an endless attack with a thought. Taking the actions of the swamp wasps as a signal can better implement his will." As soon as Lear finished speaking, the army immediately began to move. Bubble Beast ignited the black-spotted bloodworm powder, gathered bubbles one by one, and began to accumulate smoke. After the black-spotted bloodworm powder was consumed, each Bubble Beast controlled 20 bubbles burning with thick fog. 8 people means 160 bubbles, more than 100 transparent bubbles burning with thick smoke floated around, and the scene was very spectacular. After the prelude was ready, Lear did not hesitate and immediately led the army to approach quietly. It has to be said that the arrogance of these evil god believers was that they did not even set up secret sentries around the dark land. Yes, if it were not for him, the other party would have the qualifications to be so arrogant. The army arrived, and Lear led the Bubble Beast quietly into the black grassland. The scene changed again, the scene of blood and flesh on the ground and twisted end. Weird fly hair appeared again. The plague flies were now paying attention to the space cracks that looked like the devil's eye. I didn't expect that someone would be so bold as to sneak in. The divine breath wrapped around the bubble beast, but the bubbles behind them remained in the edge area. The bubble beast can control the diameter of the bubble to be 200 meters, which is enough for operation. Until it went deep into the range of 150 meters, the bubble beast signaled to Lear that it was enough to attack. The plague flies gathered together. Lear took a deep breath and decisively ordered the attack. Whooshed up. The soldiers waiting in the edge area suddenly saw the bubbles filled with smoke around them whistling into the black grassland. Just one step away, the bubble disappeared. The look was inexplicable. The disease flies that gathered together suddenly turned their heads after the bubbles flew into this piece of flesh and blood. Their compound eyes revealed a cold murderous intent. Who is it? But after seeing the bubbles, they were all a little puzzled. With these attacks containing a little magic power, could they hurt them? Some of the disease flies flew out to stop them, but the bubbles that were flying straight suddenly rose and directly passed over these monsters that could not fly too high. It rushed towards the dense crowd, and it was too late for the remaining disease flies to stop it. They could only watch the bubbles rush to their side and explode. Bang bang bang. A series of deafening noises burst out, raising waves of air. The oppressive fog inside burst instantly at this moment, covering the entire space with the air wave. Caught off guard, these disease flies were blown away by the air wave, and suddenly coughed because of being choked, and the poisonous fog was constantly inhaled into their bodies. Then, I felt that everything in front of me was distorted, and an endless desire for destruction surged in my body. Features of black spotted bloodworm powder. Those who inhale it will become crazy and attack the life around them crazily. After the poison is over, the heart will stop beating and the blood vessels will burst. The unprepared plague flies were all hit at this moment. They flew towards their companions fiercely, opened their mouths to bite, and stabbed down crazily with the curved tail sting on their abdomens. The scene instantly became bloody. The monsters began to kill each other. The craziest one was one of the plague fly generals who was hit. It was hit head-on by the bubble and exploded directly. It was impossible to estimate how much poisonous fog it inhaled. At this moment, holding a long-handled double-edged battle axe, it slaughtered crazily around. No plague fly could stop his blade. The scene became extremely bloody. Lear was also overwhelmed by the emotions watching from behind. He originally only intended to use alchemical potions to disrupt the opponent's formation, but he didn't expect the effect to be so good. The wings of the plague flies flapped like large fans, and the thick fog quickly dissipated as they fought. When the fog was so light that it was harmless, the Wetland Lizardmen warriors suddenly saw the mud wasps rushing out like arrows. They were highly alert and immediately followed their footsteps and stepped into the black grass. But when the Wetland Lizardmen warriors saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but be stunned. The enemies they were facing were almost dead or wounded at this moment, and there were less than 200 left on the field, and they were still fighting each other. One of the fierce and arrogant plague fly generals last night also fell at this moment, and two were shaky. What was going on? While they were wondering, the mud wasps with faster flying speed had already killed to the center of the battlefield. The sharp tail stinger opened exaggerated blood marks, and the poison was injected into its body. Kill all the last remaining soldiers. When the Wetland Lizardman warrior rushed to the front, there were only two plague fly generals left on the field. Riding on the swift lizard, Hags rushed forward fiercely, without holding back, and burst out with all his strength. Two level 12 heroes with very weak strength were beheaded by Hags one by one under the gaze of everyone. This surprise battle ended abruptly with an ending that no one expected. The Wetland Lizardman was over before he could even fight the enemy. When Lear arrived, Hags was holding the head of a plague fly general in one hand. "Master, the enemy has been annihilated." Lear nodded, ignoring everything else, and his eyes immediately looked at the void crack that looked like the devil's eye. He could sense that the crack contained an extremely evil aura, which was almost the same as the feeling when General Plague Fly summoned the will of the Demigod last night. At this moment, the crack trembled slightly, then slowly opened and turned into a blood-colored pupil. The light blood-colored energy surged up, covering the entire flesh and blood land. The soldiers around felt creepy at this moment, as if they were stared at by a dragon, and breathing became difficult. Hags clenched the steel knife in his hand, staring at the blood-colored eye. Danger, extremely dangerous. Every cell in his body was warning him. "You lowly blasphemer! How can you challenge the great god?" You can't run away. I will catch you back, drain every drop of blood from your body, and use your soul to light the furnace fire. This land can only belong to me." That the low and angry voice like thunder came from the blood-red pupils, with a bit of darkness and emptiness, as if it came across the long river of time. Everyone's sense of crisis soared to the extreme at this moment. The Lord of Fowl and Flies was extremely angry at this moment, and the fight with another demigod had exhausted his strength. It was not easy to find the main plane, and obtained a lot of resources, and barely made some progress. Now it is inexplicably messed up by a human. How dare he? Today, I didn't pay attention for a while, and the power I transmitted was cleaned up by the other party again. Without the resources of the main plane, that damn vampire will tear him apart. But just after he roared, he saw the human lord approaching step by step under the gaze of the blood-red eyeball in the air, and arrived at the bottom. The other party slowly raised his head, and there was no fear on his handsome face. His tone was indifferent. "Lord of the Stink and Flies, a fly hiding in the sewer, who gave you the courage to bark in front of me? A demigod is also qualified to call himself a god in front of me?" The Lord of the Stink and Flies was instantly furious. A human, a lowly reptile that has not even reached level 10, dared to despise him so much. Damn it, damn it. In anger, a tremendous force surged into the eyeball. This eyeball is his original eyeball, which has the power to connect space. It is with this that he set foot on the main plane. The surging power made the eyes emit a dazzling scarlet light. Just when he wanted to use his supreme power to crush the damn human across the plane, he suddenly found that the other person was emitting a faint blue energy, and then the human slowly stretched out his right hand, slightly bending his palm like picking fruit. The blue light also enveloped his eyeballs at this moment. The next moment, his vision suddenly became dark, an unspeakable pain came, his will suddenly withdrew from the main plane, and he subconsciously covered his eyes. Green blood dripped madly. The Lord of Smell and Flies put down his palm and looked at the blood on it, and felt the emptiness and pain in his right eye. His heart was full of disbelief and shock at the moment. How is it possible? How is it possible? That damn human actually took out my eyeball. He is a demigod. How could that bastard hurt a demigod? Chapter 89 Huge Profits, 4,800 words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lear held the beating scarlet eyeball in his hand, his eyes full of heat. He could clearly feel that the eyeballs contained majestic energy, like a suppressed volcano that could erupt at any time with hot lava tens of thousands of feet high. The swamp godhead exudes endless power and suppresses the opponent. He also didn't expect that the Lord of Stink and Flies would be so crazy and dare to send his eyeballs to the main plane in front of him. If the Lord of Fishy Stink and Flies were to come in his true form, it would be difficult to harm him with his current strength. But the fatal thing is, the other party sent his eyes over from a different plane. Isn't this just door-to-door delivery? Life above the demigods is excluded by the rules of the main plane and cannot come down at all. This eyeball definitely possesses crushing power when faced with ordinary life. How powerful are demigods? It is easy to destroy mortals across the plane, but he is not a mortal. He controls the supreme power godhead. How can demigods compare to true gods? The eyeball is held in the hand and has shrunk to the size of the head. Scarlet, evil, and fishy, gives people a strong sense of discomfort. Lear's excitement was beyond words. Just this eyeball, today's action has already made the Blood Mother a prophet. Go back and be devoured by the flesh slaughterer. Maybe you can awaken a more powerful power. He took a few deep breaths, suppressed the ups and downs in his heart, and turned his head to look around. August, you lead the army to clean up the battlefield and bring back all valuable things. The eyeballs are still in my hand, and I can faintly feel the stench and the Lord of Flies calling madly. If you relax a little, you may break through the void in the next moment. Go back and digest it as soon as possible to avoid a long night and many dreams. The surrounding wetland lizard warriors were still in shock, looking at Lear, who controlled the scarlet eyeballs with one hand and exuded grand majesty. His eyes became extremely hot. They watched helplessly as Lear took off the devil's eye that could connect the planes out of thin air. That ferocious and powerful life, the terrifying existence that made them almost unable to breathe, had no ability to resist at all, and its eyeballs were gouged out alive. How powerful and ferocious is this? This is their master. If we could see their faith values, we would definitely find that the first group to follow Lear had reached the full value. The newly joined Wetland Lizardmen, who had never seen Lear's various methods, were shocked even more intensely at this moment, and their inner worship soared at an exaggerated speed. It is the nature of all life to follow the strong. After Hags scolded him, the Wetland Lizard came back to his senses and quickly cleaned up the battlefield in excitement. The corpses were collected one by one and put into bubbles. While everyone was busy, Lear suddenly found that the eyeballs in his hand stopped beating. The strong call also disappeared. The Lord of Stink and Flies gave up. Just when he was confused, the intelligence system in his mind quietly revealed new information. You forcibly dug out the eyeball of the evil demigod, the Lord of Stink and Flies, and suppressed it with absolute power, causing him to completely lose this eyeball with demigod power. You gained an additional piece of information, the land under your feet. It is a special treasure controlled by the Lord of Stink and Flies, the land of Scarlet Carrion. Go to its center and use the power of Godhead to go 20 meters underground. You can directly remove the soul imprint of the Lord of Stink and Flies and control this land of Scarlet Carrion. Lear looked at the refreshed information and was greatly surprised. The Lord of Stink and Flies has really given up, and now he can safely keep it in his pocket. In addition, the land under your feet is actually a treasure. Off the mark, without information, it would be impossible for him to think of this. Now he turned around with great interest, made some calculations, and quickly found the central location, not far from the space crack just now. Stride forward and stand still, mobilizing the swamp godhead within the body. The sacred and inviolable power surges out, driving directly into the flesh and mud. In a moment, he discovered a ball of flesh and blood that condensed unique power, without any hesitation. The power of the godhead penetrated directly and violently. The ball of flesh and blood twisted violently, and then roared hysterically. Damn bastard, damn it! I must let you go. The shrill and piercing scream stopped abruptly, and Lear did not give the Stink and the Lord of Flies a chance to roar, roughly dispelling the power left by the opponent in the ball of flesh and blood. He left his own mark. The moment the mark was generated, his perception suddenly expanded. It's like having a god's perspective, and you can directly perceive the entire land of Scarlet Carrion. This land of flesh and blood is an irregular circle, with a depth of about 20 meters and a radius of 300 meters, made entirely of carrion. You can feel that the ground is littered with bones and heads. He couldn't imagine how many lives had to be slaughtered to create such a horrific place of death. As he marveled, a unique attribute panel appeared in his mind. Crimson Carrion Land. Level, Special, Range, Radius 300 meters, Characteristics, 1. After taking control of the Scarlet Carrion Land, standing on it will increase all your own attributes by 50%. 2. Swallow flesh and blood. You can swallow flesh and blood to increase the range of the Scarlet Carrion Land. 3. Evil gathers, and the evil power is abundant, which can attract powerful evil beings. The opponent has a chance to become a garrison and be loyal to the Lord of the Scarlet Carrion Land. 4. The flesh and blood cage can mobilize carrion to form a scarlet cage to imprison the enemy. The energy of the Scarlet Carrion Land has not been completely consumed, so the cage is immortal. Evaluation. An evil existence born in the abyss used hundreds of thousands of corpses to create this terrifying place. After reading its properties, Lear's heart trembled. For features. And none of them are trash. What's more important is that this land of flesh and blood can continue to grow, and there seems to be no upper limit. The Lord of Stench and Flies is simply a treasure delivery boy. Lear was full of affection for that demigod at this moment. This guy was too polite. He would not mind giving away artifacts, dragon eggs, etc. in the future. After taking a few deep breaths and barely calming down my surging emotions, I suddenly had a thought. The surrounding Wetland Lizardmen suddenly felt that the surrounding space was rippling like water waves. The scarlet earth in front of him gradually faded and then disappeared without a trace. When I turned around and looked around, I saw that the ground beneath my feet had turned into an ordinary patch of short grass. It was as if the horrific scene he had seen before was a fiction. That's right, the Scarlet Carrion Land is not fixed on the earth, but can be moved and taken away like other treasures. Lear felt the condensed land of Scarlet Carrion in his mind, and the curvature of his mouth gradually increased. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Ha ha ha. In future battles, if we directly open this terrifying place, we will not be able to instantly form a home field advantage. and he feels that there are still many points that can be explored. The potential is endless. In a good mood, he saw that the army had collected the corpses and did not stay much. Wave back, he conveniently put the scarlet eyeball into the empty bag. The smile on my face on the road could not go away. This raid can be said to have earned brain congestion. The first is to eliminate the second wave of crises brewed by the fishy stench and the Lord of Flies. If the other side was left alone and its troops gathered, at night, he could not imagine what would happen. There may be a scene where more than a dozen plague fly generals lead an army of tens of thousands of plague flies to besiege the city of Welu. That would be a tragedy. Fortunately, his proactive attack nipped this threat in the bud. The second harvest, thousands of corpses of plague flies. This is also a rich loot. The corpse is so important to him that it has become a necessity. It can be used in any direction. Third, the fishy stench and the eyeballs of the Lord of Flies. This is an eyeball dug out alive from that demigod's body, containing the power of the demigod. The power contained in it surges like a tsunami. Going back and feeding the flesh slaughterer won't make it go any further. Cool. The fourth is the land of scarlet carrion in your hand, a land with powerful properties that can grow, which means there are endless possibilities for the future. All in all, this battle was a fruitful one, and the price he paid was just some black-spotted bloodworm powder. Compared to the harvest, it is nothing to mention. This is what fighting should be like, so comfortable. But after this hunting, there were no problems. This attack only temporarily suppressed the potential threat. After this battle, the Lord of Stink and Flies will definitely not take action again in a short period of time, but once the opponent attacks again, it will be shocking. The demigod had already fallen into his hands twice, and also lost his own eyes and the treasure of the Scarlet Carrion land. Hate him with all my heart. If he is allowed to seize the opportunity, he will devote all his energy to revenge. No one dares to underestimate the jealousy of a demigod. One must be prepared for this. With his thoughts at this point, the excitement in Lear's eyes faded a bit, but then his eyes became cold again. Just give him time to develop, let alone revenge. The lair of the Lord of Stink and Flies has been destroyed by you. His only enemy is time. The rapid growth of Welu's city made him more and more confident. There was silence all the way, and when the sky was dotted with stars, the army returned to the territory. Bane, who was a little worried, breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the large army returning, and hurried forward to greet them. "Good night, my lord." Lear nodded, briefly recounted today's battle, and said in a deep voice, "The territory must be more vigilant in the future. The Lord of Stink and Flies will definitely take revenge. We must be prepared and must not take it lightly." Bane's face immediately became serious. Revenge of the demigods. He immediately felt strong pressure, but his eyes became firm again in an instant. The look he looked at Lear was filled with fanatical confidence. Under the leadership of the adults, he firmly believes that no matter what the enemy is, it is impossible to harm Welu City. It's the madness and adoration that comes with victory after victory. "Sir, as long as you are here, no one can destroy our territory." Lear took a deep look at the Meyer hero. "With your joint efforts, I also firmly believe it." After a few words of admonishment, we didn't talk any more on this topic, motioning to the bubble filled with corpses nearby. "These corpses are used to cultivate cold-blooded cavalry. We need higher-level troops." Bane looked at the harvest, and a smile appeared on his wrinkled face. "As you wish." Then Lear asked the army to disperse and rest. He took Hags to the place where the little lizards were kept. Let the bubble beast unload the corpses. Thousands of them piled up into a small hill. He looked at the 10 wetland lizard warriors wearing heavy armor who were specially selected around him. "Each of you go and choose a little lizard as your future partner. I will transfer you to become cold-blooded cavalry. I have seen all the merits you have made, and I will not treat any brave warrior unfairly." These are the warriors who have followed Lear from Lauren City to the present. Each of them has made great military achievements. They deserve to be rewarded first. Several wetland lizardmen were immediately excited and their eyes became extremely hot. Cold-blooded cavalry is of great significance to lizardmen. Just like griffins to humans, they are the existence of spiritual totems, being able to change jobs and become a cold-blooded cavalry is the ultimate pursuit that all lizardmen dream of. After thanking them repeatedly, they immediately entered the circle and began to carefully select. The small lizards the size of a palm could not see much difference, and they were quickly selected. Seeing this, Hags strode forward and told them how to change jobs. Then he condensed a special lizard rune with his own blood and integrated it into a corpse. The selected small lizards immediately went forward and devoured them frantically, and soon they were eaten up. When the small lizards stopped eating, the wetland lizard warriors immediately cut their palms and began to feed them with blood. After swallowing the blood, the small lizards' eyes immediately turned scarlet, and they began a new round of devouring. With sufficient blood and flesh, it only takes 2 to 3 days for them to evolve into real killing machines. Fast mad lizards. These wetland lizardmen will also share their lives with them and gain more fierce combat power. With the example of Hags in front, Lear is full of expectations for the cold-blooded cavalry. After finishing the matter here, he walked briskly to the swamp tree man. The sleeping flesh and blood slaughterer under the tree trunk was silent at this moment, like a corpse that had been dead for a long time. No heartbeat, no breathing, and even no head. He opened the cloth bag and took out the scarlet eyeball. Compared with the eyeball dug out from the plague fly general yesterday, the power contained in this one today is completely different. The moment the eyeball appeared, the flesh and blood slaughterer seemed to sense something. His body trembled, and then he supported himself with his hands and slowly stood up. The headless body turned to Lear. The invisible, sun-like eyes stared at him closely. "Master, I sensed a stronger breath of Demigod." Lear smiled happily and handed over the scarlet eyeball in his hand. "This is the eye dug out from that Demigod." The flesh and blood slaughterer was slightly stunned, and then the invisible eyes became extremely hot. "Master, I can feel that the power contained in this eye is very special. If I can devour it, I have a 50% chance of taking away the power of the Demigod." "Take away the opponent's power? And it's 50% sure?" Lear was quite unbelievable. This guy is quite fierce. After all, he is a demigod, not some cat or dog. After coming to his senses, he inexplicably felt that the Lord of Fowl and Flies was a bit like a livestock he kept in captivity, and he could always pluck a handful of wool from it. He handed over the eyeball. "Very good, then I will reward you. Thank you for your gift." The tone of the flesh and blood slaughterer was full of joy. He could feel that this eye would prompt him to undergo further transformation. The next moment, the scarlet eyeball floated up as if it had lost gravity, and flew directly to the side of the flesh and blood slaughterer. The deep red energy surged out, covering the eyeball, and then condensed into tentacles, pulling the eyeball towards his body. The eyeball seemed to sense something, and suddenly burst out with fierce energy, retreating madly, but under the absolute power, it had no effect at all. It was dragged close to the chest by bloody tentacles. The moment it touched the skin, the sutured flesh and blood directly split open a hole and swallowed the eyeball. A huge bulge appeared on the chest, and after a few breaths, it gradually subsided and returned to calm. At this moment, the originally calm breath of the flesh and blood slaughterer was like a collapsed mountain hitting the sea, raising a huge wave of thousands of feet. It surged fiercely, an invisible pressure instantly dissipated around it with it as the center. At this moment, everyone in the city of Wei Lu suddenly turned their heads to look in this direction, their eyes full of fear. Their backs were instantly wet with cold sweat. The pressure that penetrated the soul and penetrated the blood made them tremble uncontrollably. The dragon blood red fish in the fish farm jumped wildly, and the fish tails made a large splash on the water surface. In the pig farm farther away, 3 pigs screamed and tried to rush out of the pig pen. Fortunately, the terrible aura only lasted for a few breaths before gradually receding. Otherwise, this pressure alone would cause great chaos in the territory. When everything returned to calm, the flesh and blood butcher in front of him completed the final transformation. This 3-meter-tall, headless, and completely sutured flesh and blood terrifying existence knelt on one knee, saluted him with the most humble attitude. "My lord, thank you for your gift. From now on, I, your humble servant, will be at your disposal." Lear saw this and smiled happily. After investing so much, it's finally time to reap the rewards. With endless expectations, he opened the attribute panel of this divine life, flesh and blood slaughterer, divine life, talent, immortality, divine immortality and immortality.